Welcome, everyone, to a special Saturday edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel and on the Believe Network. I'm Vince. That's Trevor. That's Brian. And if we're doing a show on a Saturday, that means the season is rapidly approaching because this is one of the more exciting and fun shows we get to do, Brian, and we get to welcome Trevor into this one. And it is our prediction show. And we are going to talk specific to Notre Dame and our predictions. You know, team, players, MVPs, all of it, right? And then we are going to dive into the CFP and what that's going to look like. And
we'll do our Notre Dame predictions before CFP predictions.
Right. So we're going to do all the Notre Dame stuff, and then we are going to do our college football playoff predictions, and we're going to have some fun with that as well. So it's going to be a good time.
And by predictions, we're talking about, obviously, Vince said all the superlatives. We'll give our Notre Dame record predictions, but we're going to do a reveal. We're going to 12-5. All of us will do our own 12-5. Then we'll do our 4-1. Then we'll actually make predictions. We're not just going to say, here's the 12 teams, have fun. We're going to predict our first-round winners, our quarterfinal winners, our semifinal winners, and then at the end of the show, all of us are going to have to go on record for who we're going to predict to win the national championship in January 2026 down in Hard Rock Cafe. That's what we have in store for you. And here's one thing that I will like to ask of you guys today in the chat. Number one, we're going to have some fun today talking about our predictions. We would love to hear who you guys think. So we're going to do things Vince said, breakout players, top rookies, role players, most outstanding, most valuable. I may even throw a surprise question in there for the guys about the coaches. We may see. I want to hear what you guys think about those too. So when we're talking about our top freshmen, who do you guys think it's going to be? Put your prediction on record this season. Same thing with the Notre Dame record when we get to it. And then we would love to hear who you guys have in the playoffs as well. So I'm excited about it. I know these two guys are excited about it. And I'm ready to get rocking and rolling. Karen just said, hi, IB, 15 more days till Miami. Karen, it's funny you put that in there because I was actually telling Angela last night about how you started this countdown at like 100 days. I was like, yeah, we have this lady named Karen. She does the countdown for us every day. So we're glad that you're here with us today, Karen, and ready to rock and roll. So Vince, you and I have been doing this now. What is it going to be, our fifth year? 22, 23, this will be fourth year basically of doing the live show. So fourth edition. Yes. Fourth edition of our predictions. And I can't wait.
I love opening myself up to just, being wrong.
Yes, more criticism.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun. But this was actually fun because I love writing out the bracket and just filling it out. And it's why I love once they start coming out with all the rankings and everything and predicting what it's going to be and all that fun stuff. But we're just going based on preseason and where we think things are going to stand. And this is going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to jump into Notre Dame first. And, obviously we've spent the offseason talking about Notre Dame. And we've been talking about what success looks like and all of those different things. But boys, why is this season so big for Notre Dame? I mean, year 4 now of Marcus Freeman, homegrown quarterback, regardless of which way it goes, like all of these different things. Why is this season so important for Notre Dame?
We've been talking about it a lot this offseason, Brian and Vince, in a lot of shows that we've done together, but I have yet to see Notre Dame in my lifetime follow up a successful season with another successful season. In 2012, you play for the national championship, and then in 2013, you go 9-4. In 2015, you were arguably a game out from the 4-team playoff. You lose to Stanford. Following season, you follow that up with a 4-8 year. 2018, you go undefeated. You're in the CFP. And then in 2019, the record on paper looks a little bit better than how the season actually went down. Then in 2020, you go undefeated in a crazy year with COVID. You make the CFP. You make your first ever conference championship game, your first year as an honorary member. And then the following season, your only ranked win is over Navy. And so there's just a lot of things that Notre Dame is going to have to prove this year, not only to us here, but to the rest of the country. I mean, David Pollack talked about it when he was on with us earlier this week about how Notre Dame is close and they are closing the gap. But until they can show some level of sustained success, they're going to kind of be in this purgatory of, we've seen you have a nice season before. We've seen you be in the playoffs before. Then the next year you're in the Champ Sports Bowl. Then the next year you're in the Citrus Bowl. Can you do it again? That is huge and going to be at stake this year for Notre Dame.
And to build on that point, it's not just for bragging rights, and it's not just for, so hey, you know, like, this is how I feel about it, and it's not for fans. It's also practical, Trevor, because Notre Dame's a hot team on the recruiting chair right now, and a big part of that is the success they had this past season. You want to keep that rolling, you keep winning. And you know, like, I think one question that I want to bring up that we'll discuss, it just reminded me before we start our actual prediction show. We did talk. We'll do like a floor versus ceiling discussion, and then you know, but you get to the point now where Trevor, as Trevor alluded to, Vince, it's what makes Marcus Freeman different from Brian Kelly, as far as like the results, not personality wise, very different.
Right.
You know, we hear one guy doesn't make excuses, one guy does make excuses. There's, you know, one guy's completely bought into what makes Notre Dame unique and special. There's a million reasons why you could say, as a fan, I much more enjoy the Marcus Freeman era than I do the Brian Kelly era.
Mm-hmm.
As a Notre Dame, and I've never hid the fact that I'm a Notre Dame fan, Vince is a Notre Dame fan, Trevor's a Notre Dame fan. We've been Notre Dame fans our whole lives. We've never hidden that fact. We also try to bring you honest analysis and objective analysis. And from a fan standpoint, love Marcus Freeman, way better coach than Brian Kelly in so many areas that involve just my enjoyment of following this football team. But the analyst part is, okay, but what makes him a better coach than Brian Kelly? And I think this season is the evidence. You can say, well, you know, he did something Brian Kelly never did. Well, Brian Kelly never had an opportunity in a 12-team playoff. Brian Kelly only had opportunities in a BCS championship game and in the 14 playoff. Brian Kelly had Notre Dame in a national championship game in year 3. And then to Trevor's point, what happened the next year? They're playing in the Pinstripe Bowl against Rutgers as a 4-loss team. You know, they were in the playoff in 2018. What happened the next year? They're playing in the Camping World Bowl against Iowa State the next season. You know, and you look at it and say, okay, that's what's going to determine if Marcus Freeman is different than Brian Kelly. I know the recruiting is this and that, but at the end of the day, you're judged for what you do on the field. Ty Willingham, from all accounts, great guy. I've met several Notre Dame players who just said, look, we love Ty as a man, as a leader, as a father figure, as a mentor, just want a very good football coach. And ultimately, you're evaluated by what you do, win-loss record. Lou Holtz is not known as a great coach at Notre Dame because he was a great mentor, which he was, a great leader, which he was, someone his players absolutely love to this day, which they do. He is known now by Notre Dame fans as a great coach because he won. And that's ultimately what this season can do for Marcus Freeman. Say, look, we not only matched what the previous coach did and the previous coaches did, we're going to take it further than that. And there's 2 ways to take it further. One is to win it all. But the other part is, sometimes before you win it all, you got to establish yourself as a legitimate team year after year after year. Dabo didn't do it in year 1. As far as like the first year they were good, he didn't the next year followed up, because I don't think 2015 was the first year they were really, really good. I think you'd go back to 2013 when they beat Ohio State in the Orange Bowl. That was the first kind of kick down the door year where Clemson became a top program. But it took them 4 years to finally win that title. But there was consistency for the most part in the years afterwards, and that's what Marcus Freeman's trying to establish in Notre Dame, is being able to have that kind of track record where it's like, dude, we're doing this year after year after year. This is who we are. Just get used to it, college football world. This is who we are. And this season does that for Notre Dame in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I don't want to trample all over the points that you boys just made, but for me, it is, we've seen some great recruiting classes. We've seen a lot of things that Marcus Freeman is doing really, really well off the field, getting good players in here. Now you just need to operate as a program that just reloads every year. Like that's my expectation for Notre Dame. Operate as a program that is reloading, not rebuilding. And Notre Dame really hasn't been in that position, or they've been in the position, but they haven't done it. Right? Like, we feel like they should be reloading, but it ends up that they're rebuilding. You know what I mean? And so I want them to be a team that is reloading every single year. Like, we feel like this year is a reloading year from a team that went to the national championship last year. You know, that's what they need to be year in and year out. Right? I'm not asking for them. No, it would be fantastic, right? But I'm not asking for the Nick Saban Alabama years. You know what I mean? I'm asking for a team that is consistently in the national championship hunt, that is reloading every single year. And it's a difference between like a game every year as to whether that is accurate or not. You know what I mean? So that's my expectation for Notre Dame and my expectation for Marcus Freeman. And I think that he's trending in that direction. That's what I'm seeing, but we need to see it year in and year out.
Lou Holtz, Thunder and Bolts with a super chat. Thank you, Lou. This is what he says, that last year defined the 2024 team and the direction of the program. This year could define the status of the program. Are we really good or finally elite?
I like that.
And I think that's a tremendous observation.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're getting at. Is last year was a great year, something that Brian Kelly did multiple times. It's something that Charlie Weiss was close to once. Everybody had that one great year. But can you just become that team year after year? That's what made the 88 to 93 stretch so good, because your down year was like 9-3.
Yeah.
You know, and now it's like, okay, you go 9-3 and beat, Florida in the Sugar Bowl, and everybody's upset about your season. It should have been better. Like
right.
That's where you want to be.
That's
as a program.
That's exactly where they should be,
right.
Not just want to be.
Right.
It's where they should be. It's where Notre Dame should have been this entire time. And for many reasons and all of those different things, they haven't been. It's been too much of this. It's been too many peaks and valleys with this Notre Dame program.
Right.
They need to hang out at the peak a little longer.
Right.
And then the valley is more like this.
Yeah, and we're talking
like this
pre-Marcus Freeman, because so far Marcus Freeman's entire tenure has been on the ascent.
Absolutely.
9-4 year 1, 10-3 year 2, 14-2 year 3. And so now it's like, okay, is that gonna, like Vince's point, is it gonna come back down and you're 10-3, 9-4? Are you gonna be kind of good and you're 11-2, but you're not quite? Or do you say, hey, look, this is just like semifinals. You just might as well just kind of, write us in at the beginning of the year and just kind of throw us in there, and you can throw, we're just going to be there all the time.
Right.
That's a bit hyperbolic, but that's what this season is about. And look,
Absolutely.
We're going to do our predictions about it, Vince, but part of that is going to be the performance of the players and the individual players. And that's what makes this next part, I think, really fun.
Correct. And I want to talk a little bit of big picture first. And I want to talk
all right.
Floor versus ceiling, right? Like let's kind of talk about this, because now, of course, it comes down to the players at the end of the day, right? But we have expectations for this team and where they are going to end up. And in our minds, we have, okay, what is an acceptable floor for this year? What is the floor? And then what is the ceiling? I feel like, I haven't seen any of your guys' answers on this. I feel like our ceiling is going to be very similar. I'm very interested to see where your floor is. So, Trevor, I'm going to throw it to you first. Ceiling versus floor for this 25 Notre Dame team.
I mean, look, when you look at the makeup of the roster, which we're going to dive into here in a little bit, you look at the status of the coaching staff. Yes, you have a new defensive coordinator. You return every key position coach that you have. Mike Mickens is back in the secondary. Max Bull is back with the linebackers. Al Washington is back with the defensive line. You flip it over to the offensive side of the ball. You got Mike Denbrock going into year 2. Mike Brown's going into year 2. Yes, you have a new running back coach, but like we said during the time of his hire, if you're going to replace anybody with Dylan McCullough, you better hope that it's Jaywan Sider. And that's exactly what happened. Joe Rudolph is going into year 3. I think a reasonable floor for this team is minimum quarterfinals. You look at the experience now, we're talking about a team that through all the injuries and all the inexperience and started the season with an offensive line with 6 combined starts and all of the numerous amount of impactful injuries that they really took head on. I think when you watch that team go make a national championship appearance, this team, older, more experienced, they're now one of 2 teams that can say that they have national championship experience in a 16-game season. I think quarterfinals minimum is a reasonable expectation for this 25 Notre Dame team.
Brian, what say you on your floor?
Anything worse than 10-2 to me in the regular season is a disappointment. And I don't want to hear about, first-year quarterback. I don't want to hear about injuries. I mean, we just saw you go 11-1 with a mess of injuries. And if you have that number of injuries again, then there's something wrong in your program that needs to be addressed. You don't have that kind of bad luck year after year. That's just kind of who you are. I don't expect that. I mean, we've got through fall camp and we've heard all the complaints about Lauren Lando and this and that. the reality is Notre Dame has had basically 2 major injuries in fall camp. They happened the same week. They haven't had really any other significant injuries, bumps, bruises, things like that. And we're over halfway through camp. Now, obviously, I don't want to jinx everything. But so far, you remember last year when we showed up for the first day of fall camp, there was like 7 guys over with the bikes that were out from summer injuries. Like, it began in the summer. Kahanu Kia was out in the summer. I mean, you just had all these guys out, and that hasn't been the case this year. So, I don't want to hear any excuses of this reason, that reason. Anything worse than 10-2 to me is a disappointing season. The schedule's challenging, but it's not to the point where there's 3 teams that are better than you on a given Saturday. And so that's why I say 10-2 is the floor. And I think the ceiling, and Trevor said it, the ceiling's you win it. You're playing for and winning the national championship. You already made it there once. Now it's about kicking the door down. That's the ceiling. And I say that, guys, because there's 2 ways of saying that. One, Vince, is, well, this is the expectation for Notre Dame every year. And that's not what I'm doing here. I'm not, and that's true. Of course, you're Notre Dame. The standard is always to win championships. That's fine. That was the standard in 07. Wasn't going to happen. You could say it was the standard, but it wasn't going to happen. It was the standard in 2016, but it wasn't going to happen. The question is how close do you get to your full potential? When I talk about this football team, it's not about, okay, sure, it's this football team, this Marcus Freeman-led football team in 2025 has the talent and the coaching and all the pieces that if they can play to their potential, as Marcus Freeman always says, it's not about the opponent. It's about us playing to our standard, the golden standard. If this team does that, they have an opportunity to win every single game that they play in the regular season and every single game they play in the postseason. Now, the road along the way can include a blemish if it ends with you hoisting up the trophy in Hard Rock at the end of the year. And I'm just saying the ceiling, the absolute maximum ceiling for this football team is to win a championship and then to win every game on the way there. You won't hear me complain about, 14-1 was nice with that national championship at the end of the year, but gee, I wish you would have beat so-and-so in week whatever. Like, no, I'm going to give a crap about that. You think Deshaun Watson was thinking about Pitt when he hoisted up the 2016 national championship trophy?
Well, Ohio State won the national championship last year, and they lost to their arch rival.
And do you think a single Buckeye gave 2 rips about the fact that 8-5 Michigan was sitting home saying, "Oh, we beat you"? Do you think Notre Dame cared one bit about Northern Illinois when they were hosting up a trophy and after beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl and beating Penn State in the Orange Bowl? No, they did not. Correct. At the end of the year, that's what this team is capable of. And I think this is a unique year that there's about 7 or 8 teams that I think, if everything goes right, have a chance to be that kind of team at the end of the year. And Notre Dame is definitely one of them.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm with both of you guys. The floor for me is 10-2, and that's getting into the playoff. To be honest with you, I feel like a floor for me is hosting a playoff game, winning that game, and at least getting to the next round. Like that's the floor. Would still be disappointed because you're always disappointed when the season ends with a loss. But then when you step back and you look big picture, like, okay, and you can explain away a few different things and depends on what those 2 losses are and things of that nature. The ceiling's absolutely a national championship. But there's no 2 qualms about it. They were just in the national championship game and have the absolute bulk of the talent returning. How can you not think that the ceiling is a national championship? So, the floor, and I think everybody can agree on this, the floor would be disappointing. We would all be disappointed if they reach their floor, right?
Barring something incredibly unforeseen.
For sure.
Yes, for sure. I would agree.
For sure. This is an absolute playoff team. Every preseason poll has them, in position to be a playoff team and to be hosting a playoff game or getting a bye. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's the expectation.
To that, Vince, and I want to kind of get to the player part first before we spend too much time talking about what the prediction is. But there's a difference between what the floor of this team is capable of and what I'll be happy or disappointed with. I think that's a different conversation. One is an analysis breakdown. The other one's a fan feeling breakdown, partially an analysis breakdown, but also sort of disappointment for me is, as a fan, they should have been better. If they're 10-2, I'm going to be disappointed as a fan. As an analyst, I can see a world where they go 10-2 with certain aspects of the team, including maybe there's a team on the schedule that's a lot better than you thought it was. And so, but as an analyst, worse than 10-2 is disappointing.
Yes.
That's where, when I use the word disappointing, that's where I'm looking at it from that standpoint.
Completely agree with you. So let's move on to kind of the next part of this show. And we're going to kind of go through the schedule a little bit before we get to some specific predictions for Notre Dame. And we were given the task of kind of figuring out what the toughest games for Notre Dame are, barring the obvious, right? So the toughest games for Notre Dame. Brian, what say you?
Well, so can we call a little bit of an audible, Vince?
Sure,
Because
yeah.
I threw some stuff at you guys after we did this. I want to do all this stuff when we talk about our predictions.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's on me. We had a schedule laid out, and then
No
I said,
problem.
hey, let's do some player superlatives and all that kind of stuff to make the show a little bit even more fun.
Right.
And I didn't let you guys know that. So we'll move those particular team parts
Gotcha.
after we do the player superlatives.
Okay. So let's jump into some player superlatives, Brian.
Well done, Vince. Well
Thank you.
done.
Thank you. It's a professional segue is what that is. So let's talk about some superlatives. And so first thing we're going to talk about is the most outstanding player on both sides of the ball. This is essentially the best player.
Let's move this to the back.
I was about to say, I'm calling audible too.
Yes.
All right.
We'll do most outstanding and MVP at the end.
Just because you guys were quarterbacks and I wasn't,
Okay.
You guys are calling all the audibles here.
It's
All
all
right,
right.
fine. I'll listen. All right, my bad. Okay. Moving on to the
Red
next.
7.
Gosh, man.
I don't even know what that means. Go to the other side.
Red 7.
Will you just go line up on the other side, please?
Go in motion.
All right. We good now, Vince? We're going to
Breakout
do
player?
most outstanding MVP. But Breakout sounds like an awesome selection.
Okay, let's start with breakout player on offense and defense. And this is a guy who maybe wasn't a starter, who becomes an impact player, or a guy who was a starter who then becomes a star, essentially. So, Brian, I will let you lead off on this one. Breakout player offense.
There's a lot of guys that I considered for this award, and I'm going to go outside the box because I have a pretty strong feeling I have an idea who Trevor's going to pick. And I could be wrong. But so I'm going to go away from where I was initially going to go based on some things I've seen the last couple days. And my breakout player is I came down to 3. One I'm going to leave for Trevor and Vince. And if you guys don't pick them, then I'll come back and tell you who that was. Another breakout player that I've strongly considered is Gerby Lambert, because Gerby Lambert has looked kind of like a dude the last couple of times I've seen him at right guard, look real comfortable playing right guard. But I'm going to go with Billy Schrouth, and that's going to be my pick up front. Is I'm going to go with Billy Schrouth as just becoming Notre Dame's best offensive lineman this season, and the consistency I've seen from Billy Schrouth in the limited practices we've seen, and the consistency that you and I've heard about, Vince, from people we've talked to. Just the attitude he's going about his business every day. When we talk to coaches at the beginning of fall camp and they're talking about leadership, and I'm sitting there waiting on them to talk about Emil first and Ashton Craig first, or, one of those two guys, and like immediately the first thing coming out of people's mouths is Billy Schrouth. So I think the light has gone on a little bit for Billy Schrouth, and I just think he's going to become the next All-American offensive lineman, the next dominant offensive line for Notre Dame, as long as he can prove that he can be healthy for an entire season, which he has not done yet. But I'm going to go with Billy Schrouth as my breakout player. I really thought long and hard about going with Gerby Lambert, but I just didn't want to dismiss just what I've seen so far, just the excellence that I've seen so far from Billy Schrouth. That's my pick. What say you, Trev?
To the surprise of nobody, I'm going with tight end Eli Raridan.
Okay, that was right.
Thank you for tuning into the Irish Breakdown podcast. Be sure to hit that like button on your way out.
The least surprising breakout prediction ever.
But look, in all seriousness, we're talking about a tight end who a year ago had 11 catches, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and I predict him to be significantly higher than that. We've talked a lot this offseason about the potential of this passing offense. Love the addition of Malachi Fields. Loved how Jaden Greathouse ended his year. And then really that rotational duo, arguably trio between Greathouse, Pauling, and Faison is going to be electric to watch. I don't think that this passing offense can reach its ceiling unless Eli Raridan has the season he's capable of having. So that's why he's my top offensive breakout player. What about you, Vince?
Well, and probably maybe no surprise to anyone, I'm going with the Remington Award watch player himself, and that would be Ashton Craig at center. I think that he could end up being one of the best centers in college football as long as he can stay healthy. And obviously, he hasn't played a competitive down of football in almost a year. And so I am excited to see what Ashton Craig brings to the table. I know he's a leader. I think he's on the short list to be a captain. I think that he could end up being a very, 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 very key piece to this offensive line as long as he can stay healthy. And I know that that's a question for scouts and that's a question for Notre Dame fans, et cetera. But I am a huge Ashton Craig fan. I think that he brings this offensive line to another level, and I think he could break out this year. I think he could be one of the top centers, when they get to draft analysis and all of those different kinds of things. I think people are going to be talking about Ashton Craig. So he's my breakout player on offense. Defensive side of the ball, Brian. Or did we hit on the guy that you?
Yeah, it was Eli Raridan.
Okay.
All right. It was Eli Raridan.
Okay, just want to make sure.
A lot of other candidates. I mean, you could talk about Malachi Fields. You could talk about Will Pauling. You could talk about Jaden Greathouse going from good players to stars. You could talk about Emil Wagner. You could talk about Anthony Knapp potentially. You could talk about Jadarian Price. You could talk about whoever you think is going to win the quarterback battle. I mean, that's the thing that's exciting about the offensive side of the ball this year, but also the thing that honestly is a little bit like, okay, we got to see it, is because there were a lot more breakout options on offense than there were defense. Because on defense, there's a lot of guys that have already kind of broken out. And so that's why I went there. But yes, that's how I feel. I was going to go with Eli Raridan, but I was like, you know what? I don't want us to just pick the same guy, and I don't want to break Trevor's heart and take his guy. So that's why I went with Billy Schrauth. And I also think that there's a chance that Billy Schrauth could become that kind of player. And that's why I'm going. It's not like I'm settling for someone. I guess I have to go with Billy Schrauth. I also believe Billy Schrauth is going to be a breakout. So it's like, of my top breakouts, which one do I want to go with? And that's why I went with him instead of Eli Raridan.
All right, so top breakout defensively, Brian, hit it.
Yeah, there are several that I went with here, Trevor. I'm going to go with, I'm going to go with a guy here because I don't want to necessarily double up on some people here in this breakdown. But so I'm going to go with Boubacar Traore, and I think just obviously health is going to be a big thing. Boubacar was banged up in high school. He was banged up last year. That's a big concern of mine for this season. But I just can't watch him at practice, fellas, and say anything other than that's a freak. Like, that is an incredibly talented football player. And I just see him being just that guy that all of a sudden everybody knows about and everybody's heard of, and everybody's like, wow, what a freaky player. And the reason I went with him over some of my other candidates, like, for example, my buddy Dan in the chat talking about Kingston Viliama-Asa, that was another one I considered. But I kind of feel like everybody already knows about Kingston already, and I don't know that the nation knows about Boubacar yet. And I think the nation knows about Bryce Young and Josh Burnham. I don't know that they know about Boubacar yet. And that's why I'm going with him as my breakout player on defense. I think he's going to be, as long as he's healthy, I think he's poised for a big, big season, guys.
I'm going to follow suit and stick along the defensive line, but I'm going to go with Jason Onye. There's been a lot of talk about who's going to replace Riley Mills from a positional standpoint, from a production standpoint, potentially an impact standpoint. And I think Jason Onye has the opportunity to step up and fill that void that was left by 99, an All-American last season, and was on an absolute tear before he got hurt. Everything that we've heard in camp is Jason Onye has been a menace. And Brian, similar to your point about Boubacar, I don't really know if the nation has been put on notice quite yet to Jason Onye either. There's a lot of talk about Bryce Young potentially, and a lot of talk about, Josh Burnham is starting to gain some momentum. Same thing with Kingston. It was tough to pick somebody in the secondary because their performance has been so good that a lot of people just know about Notre Dame secondary. It's a good problem to have. But I'm going with the big man in the middle. I'm going with Jason Onye.
I'm going to stay in the same room. And I am going to go with Bryce Young because I do think people know that he exists. I don't think that they know how good he's actually going to be. They know he can block punts. And I just feel like he is going to absolutely break out this year. Watching him do things, wearing number 95 now, he just looks so stinking good. And I was waffling back and forth between Traore and Young. and I decided to go with Young on this one. It's pick your poison, and I think that's the best part about this defense is pick your poison on who you're going to, focus on as offensively. Who are you going to double? Because somebody's going to be single covered, or they're going to try to block them with one guy or a tight end or something like that. Good luck. And I think either one of those guys has an opportunity to make some waves this year, and it's going to be really, really fun to watch. I think there's going to be nightmares being had of 95-5 just for quarterbacks all season. So I went with Bryce Young here. Next category, gentlemen, is top freshmen. And unlike freshman All-Americans, we don't do red shirts here at Irish Breakdown. We are talking about true freshmen. And so we pick one on offense, we pick one on defense. And I'm going to go with Trev first on this one. Who is your top freshman on offense, Trev?
This category was tough because I don't know how many true freshmen are going to see the field on offense this year. The number, I think, is a little bit smaller than what you could potentially see on defense. But offensively, I'm going to go with Nolan James, the running back. I think the injury to Kedron Young put Nolan James in a spot where he now has a role to fill. It's no longer, okay, he's the flashy true freshman. Let's see what capacity we can get him on the field on. It's, hey, there is now a need. Yes, you still have Jeremiah Love, you still have J.D. Price, and you have Jabron and Aeneas. But I don't know if I would chalk up Jabron Payne and Aeneas to being a short yardage goal line back quite yet. And then I think the coaching staff has an important question on their hand of, do you want to put that much workload on your two premier backs that you will need in the postseason this year? And so I think Nolan James steps up. He has a specific role that he can fill. I have him as my offensive freshman of the year.
Brian?
That's mine. Look, there's actually a few that I wanted to consider. I think Elijah Burris is a player that has a chance to make an impact this year at wide receiver. I think James Flanagan is a guy that has an opportunity to make an impact at tight end. I'm almost kind of not wanting James Flanagan to necessarily be this pick because I feel like if he's this pick where he's the absolute best freshman of all of them, it might possibly be because of an injury, and I don't know that that's where I want to go. I feel the same way about Will Black. I thought about Will Black, but I feel like the only way that Will Black gets that opportunity is because of an injury, and I don't necessarily want to see anybody get hurt. I think Nolan James, there already is an injury that's already happened that's opened up that door for Nolan James. And, look, guys, we sit there at practice. I know Sean and Trevor were at practice one day just watching the running backs, and you're just like, this number 23 is not your typical freshman. Doesn't look like a freshman. He doesn't move like a freshman. He doesn't carry himself like a freshman. And I think he's going to be a really good football player for Notre Dame. I don't know that he's going to necessarily be the best at the end of their careers, but as far as a guy that's going to make the biggest impact right away, I'm going with Nolan James. And I only say that because a guy like Will Black, and that's an elite potential top 10 NFL draft pick type of player. Nolan James has a chance to be an NFL football player someday. Like, that's obvious from the first moment you lay eyes on him. And I liked him a lot coming out of high school, guys. You know that. I'm a top 150 player. I don't know if there's anybody, like, no national rankings had him higher than I had him. And when you have a guy ranked that high and then you watch him play and you're like, dude, I think he might be better than I thought he was, and you already had him ranked higher than everybody else, that's a good sign. That's a really good sign. And I felt that way about several freshmen this year, guys. I felt that way about Nolan James. I felt that way about Elijah Burris. And I felt that way about Scrap Richardson. Like, those are three freshmen on offense. And I'm like, dude, I was already higher on them than most people, but now watching them in person, there's confirmation. But even beyond that, there's like, dude, this guy's actually faster than I thought he was, or a little bit better than I thought he was. And I think that's going to be fun to watch these guys develop.
Well, for me, the duty of going last is that your guy's probably going to get talked about, and that is the case here, and that's okay. But I'm going with Elijah Burris, and the reason why is because I think he's got a really good shot of cracking the top 6 right now. I think the 4 are pretty much set in stone, and it's okay. Who's going to be 5? Who's going to be 6? I think Gilbert has a good chance of being 5, and I think Elijah Burris has a good chance of being 6 right now. If the season started right now on August 16th, I think it might be the true freshman. And since I don't think they want to go any deeper than 6, and I think the majority of the time it'll probably be 4, but they will dip into that 5 and 6. Again, it's about opportunity, right? It's about opportunity to get on the field, and it's about opportunity to make an impact and things like that. I think he's going to have an opportunity. I think he's going to get on the field. I think he's going to have a chance to do some things. And we haven't heard anything negative about what Elijah Burris has done. And we all obviously also know that he comes from good stock when it comes to knowing how to be a wide receiver. So I think he's going to make some waves as a freshman. So I'm kind of excited about what Elijah Burris can do, because I was skeptical that a freshman was going to be able to break into the top 6, and he's proven me wrong. And I'm excited about that. I think this kid's special. I do. Next category, gentlemen, is top role player. And this is kind of a guy who maybe isn't a starter, or maybe he's an overlooked starter who just brings the lunch pail every day, does the dirty work, like that type of a player. Brian, hit it.
Yeah. Every time you do that, you got to stop saying hit it, man, because everything you say hit, I think this is what it take two to make the thing go right. I mean, come on, man, stop saying that. Making that pop in my head. All right. I already got Holding King stuck in my head for 3 days.
Oh, that's fantastic. Right? That's fantastic.
Top role player, guy that does the dirty work, a guy that maybe doesn't get a lot of the love and doesn't get a lot of the praise and doesn't necessarily get the, oh, this guy's so good. I think there's 2 that I look at in this regard. One is Jordan Faison, but the guy that I'm going with is Jadarian Price. And you guys may say, I don't think he really qualifies for this because he's an impact player, but I don't think he has the respect from the Notre Dame fan base that he should, much less nationally. Matter of fact, I see more love for Jadarian Price from people like Greg McElroy and national people that look at Notre Dame. I mean, David Pollock brought him up, than what you see from some in the Notre Dame fan base who get mad every time Jeremiah Love comes off the field. And so I'm going with Jadarian Price because I think he's one of the best backs in the country, and he's not even a starter for this football team. But I think he's going to be counted on this year big time. There's going to be a game where teams are either keen on Jeremiah Love, or maybe he's a little dinged up, or maybe the run game package that they need that game is better suited towards Jadarian's skill set, where you're going to look back and say they needed 24 to get this thing done, to get this season the way it needed to. And that's why I'm going with Jadarian. And then you hear that him and Jeremiah are both back there getting opportunities to return kicks. That also excites me a little bit. But my top role player is going to be Jadarian Price.
I'm going to go Ty Washington. Yes, it's another tight end, and I'm the tight end guy. But Notre Dame historically has ran with 2 tight end sets for really as long as I can remember. Especially in recent years, Notre Dame runs a lot of 12 personnel. And now with the injury to Kevin Bauman, there is an even bigger question mark around, okay, who steps up as the number 2 tight end? I said that Eli Raridan was my number 1 breakout candidate, but I think that it's going to be interesting to see what wins the day. Is it Jack Larson's potential as a pass catcher, being a redshirt freshman, or is it the more experienced Ty Washington who's coming from the SEC? He's going up against his former team on this schedule upcoming. He raved about his abilities as a blocker, not just as a red zone threat pass catcher. So mine is going to be Ty Washington because I think if he performs well as a run blocker, something that I evaluate tight ends on to a very high degree, if he's able to come in and step into the role that was left vacated by Cooper Flanagan, that's hurt. And what I expected Kevin Bauman to be this year, it's not going to get talked about a lot. Now, I know that these fellows will cover it upon further review, waiting for the time that comes out and say, hey, did you see number 7 throwing some blocks there? Yeah, I think it's going to be Ty Washington this year for the role he's going to play on offense.
Well, you're staying in the tight end room. I'm going to stay in the wide receiver room, and I'm going to go with Micah Gilbert here. I think Micah Gilbert is going to see the field a bunch. I am very curious to see how much he gets targeted, but I do think he's going to be out there throwing some blocks and doing some dirty work and things of that nature. He's the first sub in for Fields, right? And Fields is going to need a blow at times, especially down in Miami when it's hot, all of those different things, right? I think he's going to be able to make a name for himself coming in from Malachi Fields. I just think he's going to be doing some dirty work over there at the field, or at the boundary position and just getting after it. I think you're going to see him throw some nasty blocks and then making some plays when it's important as well. So I'm going to go Micah Gilbert here.
So I'm going to give a little nugget that leads into Vince's prediction.
Oh, I love
and
that.
I'll just say this. From what I've heard about how fall camp has gone, I don't think that the Notre Dame quarterbacks are going to have any thought of, oh, Malachi's not on the field. Let me look somewhere else. Obviously, I've already put on the board the fall camp that I've heard Malachi's having, and it's been fun to hear. But I think when 14's on the field, I don't think there's going to be any hesitation to throw to the boundary.
Love it.
And you never know. He may play some other spots. So
love it.
That's I don't think that pick is a crazy one.
We were excited about him last year, and it just didn't quite work out with the rotation and just kind of how things went, right? As a true freshman. And I just feel like he's picked up where he left off, and I'm excited about 14.
I was curious how he was going to bounce back from the hand injury in
Sure.
the spring practice as well, Vince, and would he take that next step? How is his attitude going to be after not playing as a freshman? Does he get in his feelings? Right. Does he transfer? If he stays, is he upset? Did they go get Malachi Fields? And now I'm all in my feelings about how they – and all he's done is put his head down and work. Mm-hmm. That's all he's done. And, whether he gets 10 snaps a game or 20 snaps a game, to your point, Vince, when he's on the field, I don't think there's going to be like, oh, well, let's not throw this down. Or, okay, let's not look at the boundary this down. And that's really where you want to be. Because what did we say during the preseason, Vince? My hope and our hope is that Micah plays to a level that when you look at the portal next year, you're not thinking, let's go get our next boundary. But we got other needs. We have needs. Notre Dame has needs. So if you're looking at it from their standpoint, but that's not one, unless you're looking for a depth guy behind Micah. That's the goal.
Yeah.
So I hope that if you're correct in this pick, Vince, it does that. It answers that question. Yeah. It's like, okay, Malachi's gone to the NFL. Now it's Micah's turn.
Yep. It's that reload mentality, baby. That's what I'm looking for. So that's part of that pick. Let's go to the defensive side of the football for this same topic, role player defense, Brian.
I'm going Josh Burnham. And technically, I don't know that he's a role player in that he may start, but he's never going to be a guy that you look at and say, you're building your defensive line around Josh Burnham, or he's the star of the game. You're going to talk about who do we pick out for breakouts? It's Boubacar. It's Bryce Young. Bryant Young. People are going to talk about Jason Onye, all deservedly. People in the chat, Junior Tuilamaka, that's my breakout player. Could very well happen. When I promise you that Josh Burnham, is not going to be another, most outstanding or MVP, that kind of thing. But this is a kid you need to win. He's that clutch player you need to win. And go watch the first drive against Georgia, and Josh is out there making plays. It's 7-0. I believe the score was 7-0. I think it was 7-0. Penn State was up. Or were they up 3-0 first or 7-0 first? I always get that. They kicked the field goal first, correct? And then so it's 0-0. They're going down there, their first long drive. And Josh Burnham makes that huge stop of Katron Allen on was it first and goal, knocks him back a couple yards. They then have to throw second and goal. They knock him back. They decide to throw on third down. Running back drops the ball. They settle for a field goal. That play was made. That drive was made by Josh Allen's big stop. And he just does that all the time, guys. I mean, you think of that phenomenal play out against Stanford where he basically intercepts essentially an option pass. He's just a clutch kid. He does all the dirty work. He's the definition of role player because what I said to you guys was what, Vince? The guy that does the dirty work. Doesn't get the love, but he does the dirty work. And to me, on defense, I don't know that there's a better example of that, in my opinion, than Josh Burnham.
Notre Dame this year needs to improve drastically on run defense. We saw that in the postseason last year. Performed really well against Indiana and Georgia, held Georgia to 62 yards. When you talk about the definition of dirty work, I think of a run-stopping interior defensive tackle. And we saw little flashes of that potential while still a little banged up in Gabe Rubio. So I'm going with him for my pick. We're sticking along the defensive line here, but we saw some flashes last year from him. He walled off Tate Ratledge, one of Georgia's all SEC guards, with one arm and then tackled the Georgia running back with the other. It's a highlight play. It's not going to get a lot of recognition on the stat sheet. It's going to go down as a tackle. Maybe even an assisted tackle if other people are able to get in there. But run plugging defensive tackles, interior defensive linemen don't get as much of the love as they need because people can go on the stat sheet and look at tackles for loss, and they can go and look at total tackles or how many sacks you have, something very heralded when you look at defensive linemen. I don't know how many Gabe Rubio is going to have this year for the role that he's going to play on this defense. But when you talk about dirty work, I think when we go back and we look at the film the day after the game, or maybe even the night of, if it's not a super late night game, I think we're going to see 97 making quite a bit of plays. So he's going to be my pick on defense.
Was your breakout was Onye, correct? Or was that Vince's breakout? Your breakout was Onye. If your breakout and your role player are correct, then I think that answers the biggest question on this defense, which is, I would argue, the interior.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that is going to be big. And Vince, I want to hear yours.
Yeah, I'm going in, I guess, a little bit of a different direction, but I'm going to go with a guy who I think just thrives in the role player role, the position that he plays, and that's Jalen Sneed. Jalen Sneed, I know, has been rotating with the ones, and he does some different things, and maybe he's going to have a little bit bigger of a role this year, maybe than in past years. It kind of remains to be seen. But I just think he thrives in that, coming off the edge, making plays in the backfield, using his speed, using his athleticism, all of these different things. The pressure was so high on him when he got to Notre Dame. And I think a lot of people have forgotten about Jalen Sneed, to be perfectly honest with you, being that 5-star guy that came in. He's made some 5-star plays, with Notre Dame. And so I'm excited about what Jalen Sneed can do as long as they use him correctly. And I think he thrives in that role player role. And I think he can be a big part of this defense, a really, really big part of this defense in that role. I just don't want them to put too much on his plate. I fear for Jalen Sneed and any Jalen Sneed fans out there that if there's too much on Jalen Sneed's plate, that's when he becomes less effective. When you take some of that off of his plate and you just let him go and play football, that is when he's most effective. And that's when I think he can really, really take this defense to the next level. So that's why Jalen Sneed is my role player.
I'm a little surprised that none of us picked Jaden Ausberry.
He was in the running,
yeah, but like I think that's like I think Rubio's a good candidate. Burnham's a good candidate. Obviously, I think Burnham's a good candidate. I think Sneed's a good candidate because I think that point you made was great, Vince. Is that Jalen Sneed's at his best so far in his career? He's been at his best when he is playing a very niche role and he can just dominate that role. I don't know that that's the only role he wants to have.
I'm sure it's not.
But I think when he's been in that role, he's been very impactful. And I think Jaden Ausberry is a guy that I look at and say he's another one that I look at and say he's not going to ever be the star of this 2025 team. Most likely, he's going to get overlooked like he is kind of by us right now. But I think it was the other day, Trev, we were talking about. Forget what the question was. It might have been a bias of hold, but it was like, well, my prediction is Jaden Ausberry because he already did it last year. I think it was like tackles for loss of linebacker or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, doesn't even start. And he's like, and he leads your linebacker room and tackles for loss. I just think it speaks volumes about him. But I think that's something, guys, also that makes what makes this Notre Dame team so good is that in the past, guys like Jaden Ausberry and Jalen Sneed and Josh Burnham aren't role players. Jadarian Price aren't role players. Micah Gilbert aren't role players. They're impact players. But the fact that we're talking about them being role players speaks volumes about just how loaded and deep this Notre Dame football team is.
Let's go to top linemen, and we'll do offense, and then we'll do defense. So, Trev, I'm going to let you lead off here. Give us your offensive top linemen.
Yeah, top linemen on offense. I looked at this room, and then I alluded back to what my bold take was back in, whenever we previewed the offensive line. Can't believe how fast this offseason has gone by, honestly.
It always does.
But my bold prediction so far throughout camp is kind of more and more coming to fruition and kind of making it seem less bold. But I'm going with Billy Schrauth here. Everything that I've seen from him in fall camp, I think he's going to take a next step. When I made my bold prediction, I said that Billy Schrauth is going to be far and away their best offensive lineman, and I don't know if it's going to be overly close. And everything that I've seen from him in fall camp, I think that he is gearing up for a really, really impactful season. I think at the end of the year, we're going to be able to sit down and talk about who had the one of the biggest impact performances of the season. And then once we get the obvious ones out of the way, I think we're going to have a long conversation about Billy Schrouth. So I'm going with number 74, left guard.
Brian, what say you, sir?
My breakout pick was Billy Schrouth is becoming the top lineman, so I think that's just going to be my pick here as well.
It's easy. Billy Schrouth is mine. Look, I'm a huge Ashton Craig fan. I think he could be the best center in the country. That doesn't even necessarily mean he's going to be the best lineman at Notre Dame. And I think Billy Schrouth is that guy right now for me. So
let me ask a follow-up question to everybody. If it's not Billy Schrouth, if you're ranking your top lineman, who's number 2? So we all had Billy Schrouth. I'm curious if we all have the same number 2. Who's your number 2? So at the end of the year, who is their, when we look back, say, here's their second best offensive lineman this season. Who is your pick, Trevor?
Emil Wagner, right tackle.
What about you, Vince?
I think at this point I'm allowed to say Charles Jagisaw, even though he's injured right now, because I think you said at the end of the year, I think there's a chance he could be back for about half the year. And if that's the case, I think he could be dominant for half the year. And I think I would put him at number 2.
I'm going to go Ashton Craig. Yeah, I'm going to go Ashton Craig. Emil's a great pick. I think Knapp would be a fine pick, especially run game wise. I still have some question marks about him in pass pro from what we've seen in fall camp, or what I've heard so far in fall camp. And I think Gerby could be in that conversation as well. But I'm going to go with the veterans on this. I like the Wagner pick. I'm going to go with Ashton Craig. I don't know that Ashton Craig will be their second best offensive lineman against Miami, just because I think he's kind of working himself back. But I mean, we sometimes forget about him, but you go back and watch the film last year and his 3 games at the end of the year, and you're like, that kid's pretty flipping good. Vince doesn't feel the way he does about Ashton Craig just because he's from Indiana. No, it's about watching the film. It's about breaking down the film and be like, this guy's a really good player.
Yeah, 100%.
And you see the impact he has. Right,
100%. And
that's where your love affair with Cam Hart came. Vince. It wasn't just like he's such a nice kid. He is.
He is.
It's a great story. It is. He's got an awesome mom. He does. It was like, I know a lot of kids that are those things, and they're still not great players.
Correct.
It's the film told us this guy's a dude.
Right.
Or this guy will be a dude when it's all said and done. And that's where Ashton Craig is for me.
Love it. Defense, Brian, who you got on your defensive lineman best player?
This is a really hard one, because I'm going to look for a combination of production. I'm going to look for a combination of consistency. I'm going to look for a combination of impact. I'm going to look for all of it. And I think at the end of the year, Notre Dame's best defensive lineman is going to be Jason Onye. I just think things I've heard about him in fall camp, I'm hesitant to pick him because it needs to show he can do it for an entire year. But then that ends up being true about a lot of guys that we could consider for this one. And there's another player I considered, but I'm going to hold off on him for another category. We can pick 2. You can pick 2 for each. But I just think value for the position, dual threat player. He's going to basically be the guy that's in a lot of ways is replacing Riley Mills, impact performance, all of that. I'm going with Jason Onye. I think he's going to finish his career off with a major bang and become a really dominant. I've been holding off, right, really pumping the Jason Onye hype train for a while, because I wanted to see him work himself back mentally and in shape wise, and just all the different things that he needed to prove. But it's like it gets to a point in time where you keep hearing from source after source after source after source. Most of the time, like, I don't even ask about him. It's just like, hey, man, how's camp going? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, and by the way, Jason Onye can't be blocked. It's just like, dude, I asked you how your Tuesday was. I didn't ask you, you know what I mean? Just like randomly throw in there how, Jason Onye is unblockable. So you keep hearing that after a while, and you're just like, okay, I'm not going to get left I'm not going to get left at the station when this train takes off. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to be on it. So that's my pick for that one.
Love it.
Trevor?
This one was also pretty tough for me, but I'm going to stay along the defensive line, but I'm going to kick it out to the end. I'm going to go Josh Burnham. Couple of reasons. One, I think that he has the opportunity to be the most well-rounded defensive end that Notre Dame has. I don't know if he's going to have the flash that Boubacar does. I don't know if he's going to have the flash that Bryce Young has. Boubacar is probably the twitchiest edge player that they have. And Bryce Young is the son of a Hall of Famer, and he's 6'7", 270 pounds. That's just going to draw attention. But then I look at the makeup of the room, and Boubacar, What is his workload going to look like to start the season? Not sure. What kind of jump does Bryce Young take from freshman to sophomore year? Unsure. Junior Tui Alamaka, I love him. I've talked about him a lot so far this offseason. But on the flip side of that coin, he also didn't play a single snap on defense the first 2 games when all of those guys were healthy. What does his role become this fall? And then Jordan Botelho, all the potential in the world. I just hope that he can stay healthy. And so with Josh Burnham, we've already seen his ability against the run. And from some of the things that we've heard from fall camp, some of the things that we've gotten to see in practice, it looks like he's starting to craft a little bit too as an edge rusher. I think he has the opportunity to be Notre Dame's most well-rounded edge player. I think he performs well enough this year where he questions coming back for his 5th year.
Oh, that'd make me so happy. I love that kid. I do.
Awesome.
Yeah. That'd make me very happy. What say you, Vince?
Well, Trevor kind of outlined why I'm picking the guy that I'm picking, and it's Boubacar Traore. I think he's got just the raw talent, and Trevor and I were standing right next to him working some drills and some things like that on one of the days that we were both there. And I mean, just up close and personal, the kid is just long, fast. It's hard not to kind of, as a football analyst, like fall in love with his game and what he's able to do. And then also him as a football player, right? And so, I mean, that's where I'm at. Like I was, football coach googly-eyed, just like watching him go through drills and just attack this dummy, the sled that he was working on. I was like, okay, he's going to be really, really good. And, I don't know when he's going to be at full strength. When is he going to be ready to roll and all of those different things. But when he is and when he does, look out college football. I'm telling you, number 5 in a golden helmet on the defensive side is going to make some noise, and I'm excited about it.
Let's say he doesn't really get going full speed, full reps until game 5. That means he still has potentially 11 to 12 games left to, you know what I mean? So, like, to your point, Vince, he doesn't have to be Lawrence Taylor in week 1 against Miami. I mean, it'd be nice.
Sure.
I wouldn't be against it, but he doesn't need it for what you're saying to happen. It just bring him along, give him those opportunities. Maybe he's that Jalen Sneed type of niche rusher in game 1, perhaps. Who knows? I mean, we'll see what his role is, but if he can stay healthy and get rolling, I mean, he is that type of impact pass rusher that Notre Dame just hasn't really truly had in a few years. You can maybe say Isaiah Foskey in 2021, but even in 2021, I don't know that even vintage 2021 Isaiah Foskey, I still don't think has the just God-given upside as a pass rusher that Boubacar has.
Yeah.
Just need to see it. We haven't seen a whole lot.
100%.
We got played one snap against USC and sacks Caleb Williams. Like, literally just played one snap. Came in because somebody got hurt, sacked the quarterback, almost gets a penalty because he's celebrating while they're trying to line up, and it's just like, act like you've been here before. Oh, wait, no, he hasn't.
He hasn't. He can't even act like it.
Right. He's like, I got one play. I'm gonna make everything out. Everything I can off of this play. But that dude, he is.
Dude, I'm excited about him. Okay, another category that we're going to hit is an interesting one. We're going to talk top transfers on both sides of the football. And Brian, I'm going to hit you first. Let's go offense, top transfer. Who you got?
This is an easier one for me. I love the Will Pauling story. I think Ty Washington is going to have a solid role for this team this year, but I'm going Malachi Fields. I think he's going to be a difference maker. I think he's going to be an impact player. He's the guy that I hope silences some of the why do we keep going to the portal for wide receivers conversation. Now, I think that's a bit of a bad argument because whatever you feel about Bo Collins and what you thought he was going to be compared to he was a very important part of that team last year, and you're glad you have him. 100%. If you're complaining about the receiver play now, imagine if you didn't have Bo Collins on your team last year. And say whatever you want about catch this. Look, all I know is he needed to make a big play at the end of the Texas A&M game, and he made it. He needed to make a big play against Georgia, and he made it. That's what I know about Bo Collins. That's what I know about that kid. And but I do also agree that you'd like to see a transfer come in and be like just a dude. And I think Malachi has the potential to be that kind of player. So he's my top transfer on offense.
Yeah, real simple. That's mine as well. Trevor, I assume that you're nodding your head, so you're going to say that too. I was tempted to go Will Pauling. I'm really kind of falling in love with his story and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, this is a stat situation, and this is a impact. It's
and
Malachi
he
Fields.
Start. I mean, Will
Right.
Pauling might not even start.
Correct.
I mean, he's going to be in a part of a 3-man rotation where Malachi is just kind of the guy into the boundary.
Yeah, agreed. Let's flip it over to the defensive side, Brian, and there's a couple of different options. You go defensive line, you could go, nickel, you could go safety, all those. Okay, go ahead, sir.
You said defensive line. I'm going Jared Dawson.
Okay.
I just love what I've seen from Jared Dawson this year. And if you'd have asked me before fall camp started, I'd have been Devontae Smith and not thought twice about it. I mean, I like what Jared Dawson did at Louisville last year. He was really good. He was okay this spring. Didn't really blow me away this spring. Loved what he did in the first practice. Have heard great things about what he's done all fall camp. I mean, the only other D tackle that I get whose name comes up more when I'm talking to sources than Jason Onye is Jared Dawson. And so you say, boy, can you replace Howard Cross? Like, that's the guy that can do it. And just love what I've seen from him so far. And we talked about the first pick, the second pick. The first pick we saw in the first practice was Adon picking off Kenny, correct? And then the next pick was the Bronte pick of CJ. Well, you watch that play, and it's part of the reason that CJ couldn't get enough on the ball to get it over top to Micah Gilbert, who had beaten a corner, was because Jared Dawson was breathing down his face. And he's just, from what I've been told, he's just been kind of doing that a lot the last couple of weeks. And so I think Devontae Smith is going to have a heck of a year for Notre Dame. There's going to be some things that you're going to enjoy watching about him, and I'll just leave it at that without giving some stuff away. He's going to be fun to watch this year. I think Jalen Stroman is starting to get comfortable in the system, Vince. You and I heard about some plays he was making in the run on the Wednesday night scrimmage that you're like, okay, I think he's getting comfortable in the system, but I just don't know that anybody's going to have the per snap impact that Jared Dawson is going to have. So that's why he's my pick.
Trevor clearly agrees with you. If you want to add to it, you can, or I can just give mine.
Ditto.
There you go. Okay.
I love it.
I don't disagree with anything that you guys,
You guys
feel.
The leaning into the mic thing and saying ditto. He's like a game contestant. Like, they don't know how to do it a mic. Like, ditto. Yeah, I agree. Well played, Trevor.
I don't disagree with anything that you just said. I just really like Devontae Smith and what he's able to bring to the table. And I know Notre Dame has had a lot of luck bringing in guys to play the nickel. A lot of luck doing that. And I think he's just in that line of guys that are going to continue to carry that torch. But I really love what I think he brings to the table in a run stopping ability. And, we talk about Notre Dame being able to, needing to be able to up their run game defense. And I think Devontae Smith is actually going to be a big part of that. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing what Zero can do on the field. And so that's why I picked Devontae Smith. But I have been delighted to hear about what Dawson is doing on the defensive line. I'll just leave it at that. He's going to be a dude.
Here's my one bigger prediction. I don't think it's going to be an easy decision by the end of the year, and I don't think it's necessarily just going to be a 2-man race. But I think it'll primarily be a 2-man race. But it won't be like there's nobody even close.
Yeah.
To your point, Vince, I think they're both going to be impactful players, and I think we're going to like the fact that they picked up Jalen Stroman.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're going to do a little bit of stat prediction, but more like cumulative stat prediction, not necessarily like he's going to have X amount of catches and blah, 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 blah. It's going to be who leads, who does these kinds of things. So let's just jump right into it. Trev, I'm going to throw it to you first. Who leads the offense in catches?
I think it's going to be Jaden Greathouse. He proved last year in the postseason that he can be a go-to guy in clutch situations. And I think that he's somebody that is going to pick up where he left off in his third down efficiency. You heard Marcus Freeman talk about it, that when Jaden Greathouse is covered one-on-one, he's open. And I think he's going to be a nice security blanket for what a new starting quarterback is going to need. And so I have it going to Jaden Greathouse with the most catches on offense.
Trevor is correct.
What is I agree? That is correct.
What is yes?
Oh, that's fantastic. No, I agree as well. I think Jaden Greathouse is going to be doing a lot of work, over the middle. He's going to be doing a lot of work down the field. He's just going to be doing a lot of work all over the place. And I feel like there's a comfort level with these guys with Jaden Greathouse, and that is going to continue for sure. He's going to be a security blanket. a la tight ends for sure, Trevor. But I do think that Jaden Greathouse is going to be that guy. Now, who leads the team in touchdowns? I'm sorry, yards. Excuse me.
Receiving yards.
Receiving yards, yes.
I'm going with Malachi Fields. Yeah. I think he'll be number 2 in catches and then number 1 in yards. I think Jaden Greathouse will be number 1 in catches and number 2 in yards.
Yep.
That's my prediction.
100% with you. I think we were talking about that back in the spring, that we thought that might be the case. Even before we saw Malachi Fields with a gold helmet on, we all kind of, I think, thought that that's probably how it was going to go down. And I still feel like that is going to be how it goes down. Very interested to see where everybody goes with this one. Who leads the offense in touchdowns of any kind? Trevor.
So I guess quick question for
they're the one that crossed the goal line.
Okay.
There you
Okay.
go.
Then that
There
answers
it
my
is.
question.
Yep.
That answers my
I know
question.
exactly
Makes it
where
a lot easier.
like it's going to be the quarterback.
Yeah, I was like, at least I hope so.
They are the ones who
Goodness.
actually accumulate the touchdown
Okay.
themselves. They get
All
the
right.
6 points credited to their account.
Okay, fantastic. Very easy answer for me then. It's Jeremiah Love. He had 17 rushing touchdowns last season, 2 receiving touchdowns, and that was with Riley Leonard accounting for 17 rushing touchdowns. I think it's
Agreed.
Jeremiah Love kind of far and away.
Agree.
Yeah.
Who do you think will be same? We're all the same. Who do you think is going to be the leading touchdown maker in receiving touchdowns? Vince? What do you think? Who do you think gets that nod?
I do feel like Malachi Fields is going to be a weapon in the red zone. So is Eli Raritan. So are a lot of other guys. I just feel like as the season progresses, the comfort level with Malachi Fields scoring touchdowns is going to be a big one. So I will go with 0.
Same.
He's going to have no touchdowns. That's a terrible prediction. Oh wait, never mind. That's his number. Trev, what say you? Who you going with?
I'm on board with the Malachi Fields pick. Notre Dame hasn't had a legitimate red zone threat at the receiver position in quite some time. And so I'm going with Malachi Fields.
Hey, Eli Raritan's on the phone. He wanted to say he thinks you sold him out. No, I'm kidding. Eli's not on the phone. I really thought you were going to go with Eli there. I'm going Jaden Greathouse. That's who I'm going with. I think Jaden's going to have, just the slot fade stuff, the after the catch stuff. The fact that I think everyone in the stadium on the other team is going to be like, hey, watch out for the 6'4" guy that, in the red zone. I think Jaden Greathouse is going to be the guy who becomes that player. So I'm going Greathouse leads him in catches. Malachi's 2. Malachi leads him in touchdowns. Jaden's 2. And then Jaden leads him in touchdowns. And Malachi is a close second.
Okie dokie. Let's flip it over to defense. And who leads the defense in tackles, Brian?
Drake Bowen. Yeah.
Can't go wrong with
an easy one
linebacker
for me.
there.
I just think you're going to have a linebacker's probably going to do it. And I think Drake is the guy that's going to have the most snaps. And I think the way that they're using the defense this year, I think he's going to be a very, very productive player. So I'm going Drake Bowen.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. I think he's going to be cleaning up a lot of stuff in there. Yeah, for sure. Who leads the defense in sacks?
What about you, Trev? You go first on this one.
I'm going with Boubacar Traore. It would not shock me in the slightest if it was Bryce Young. But everything that I've seen from Boubacar in practice, I think that he's going to fly under the radar significantly until he doesn't. And then I think by that point, it's going to be too late because he's going to be in a rhythm. So I'm going with Boubacar leading the team in sacks this year.
Same.
I can't go against my pick as the best defensive lineman. I think he's going to be racking up an awful lot of sacks. I was actually tempted to go Jalen Sneed here, but I don't know if he's going to get the same opportunities that Boubacar is going to get after the quarterback. So just from an opportunity standpoint, I'm going to go with Boubacar here as well. How about the Notre Dame player who leads the defense in interceptions? Brian.
I'm gonna go with Christian Gray here. I think that quarterbacks are going to be tasked with making a decision, and who has been getting all of the offseason love. Rightfully so, but it's been Leonard Moore. He was the FWAA Defensive Freshman of the Year. He's on the Bronco Nagurski Award watch list, the Jim Thorpe Award watch list. His measurables are off the charts. He's 6'2", almost 200 pounds. Everybody knows Leonard Moore's name. I think Christian Gray, first of all, he probably should have led the team in interceptions last year if he caught 3 or 4 of them. and still had 3 on the season. But I'm going to go with Christian Gray. It's a pick your poison type of deal. So I'm going with the now number 6 junior in the secondary.
I was going to go there, but I think we're going too many of the same on these, so I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to go with Don Schuler. I thought about Tay Johnson, but I think Tay's going to be kind of part of more of a rotation there. I'm going to go with Don Schuler. I just think, number one, he's the way they use their safeties, he's going to get those opportunities. He's also a really smart player. As we saw in the first practice of the season, he's good at baiting quarterbacks into to mistakes. He's good at, like, I know where the quarterback wants to go, but I'm going to hang back until the ball comes out. Then I'm going to jump the route. I think it's going to be a Don Schuler. So that's my pick on this one. I was back and forth between Christian and Don. I'm not just like changing my pick, but I was like kind of, okay, I'm back and forth. But with you going Christian Gray, I'll mix it up a little bit and go with Don.
Well, obviously, my pick is going to be one of the two that you guys just selected, and it's going to be Christian Gray for all the reasons that Trevor outlined. I think he's going to get a lot of action, and I think teams are going to regret it at some point. And so I'm going to go Christian Gray on this one.
You're supposed to have my back, Vince. What you backing up Trevor for, man?
But that's what everybody thinks I'm going to do. So I pulled the old switcheroo.
Oh, I see what you did. So I got to suffer because everybody else thinks, okay, I see how it is. All right.
That's
right. I'm going to remember that.
I'm sure you will.
Okay.
I changed my pick to a Don Schuler.
No, I want you to give your honest opinion, Trevor. Vince is the one that's always supposed to agree with me. Didn't you know that? That's what we're told all the time. Vince only ever agrees with me. And I thought, I was expecting him to do it again, and he went away from me. So I'm a little hurt over here. A little sad.
Trevor always comes in from the top ropes. I love it. That's great.
All right. Well, we got the 2 big ones up next,
I was going to say, are we allowed to go outstanding now?
Let's do it, man.
Okay, so here we go for a recap. Just in case anybody was curious, most outstanding is the best player, most dominant, most productive, the best. And we're going to go 1 on offense. We're going to go 1 on defense. Trevor, who is your most outstanding offensive player? This should not be a surprise. Go.
Jeremiah Love. I think Notre Dame returns the best running back in the country. And he put up the numbers last year, and I think he's going to be more involved in the pass game this year. I think when you look at Jeremiah Love, he's going to bring an element to this offense where it's not going to be as simple as let's just load the box and stop 4. It won't be that simple. They're going to move him around. They're going to put him in a spot where he can succeed running the football and catching the football. And so I think at season's end, I know it might seem like the obvious choice to some, but when I look at it, he's the star of this offense right now. There will be others that join him, but right now everybody else is trying to catch up with where he's at. And so I have Jeremiah Love.
I agree. I think he's one of the best players in college football, if not the best player in college football, just regardless of position. And I mean, you talk about outstanding. He's going to be productive. He's going to be dynamic. He's going to be the focal point of the offense. He is absolutely that player. And I don't know that. I mean, he is the guy that you look at, and they've had some great players in recent years, but it's been a while since they've had in my opinion, on offense, a Will Fuller type of skill player, a Michael Floyd, a Golden Tate type of skill player, where you're just like, this guy is just the best of the best in the game as a skill player. I don't count tight end. I mean, it's a little bit of a different type of thing. They've obviously had that and recently with Michael Mayer, but where you just look at Notre Dame as the most explosive player in college football or the most dynamic player with the ball in his hands in college football. And, they've had that occasionally. You think of Golden Tate in 2009, Will Fuller in 2015, but Jay Love's going to be that for Notre Dame this year. He's special.
This might have been the easiest category to select in this show today. So yes, it's Jeremiah Love, and I'm okay with it. So let's flip it over to defense. I think we might have some different answers here, gentlemen. So Brian, how about you go first here? Defensive outstanding player.
This one wasn't as easy for me, but I do think the answer is Leonard Moore. And I just think his combination of size, physicality, instincts, athleticism, just feel for the game, coachability, work ethic. Like when you talk to people around the program, you get a different superlative about Leonard Moore. Some people talk about he's so big and strong, and other people talk he's so fast, and other people talk about he's such a hard worker. He's such a great kid. He's so smart. You get something different that they love about him. But it's like they all agree on all the traits. It's just different people are impressed by it. And I just think when you just talk about dominance, I don't think he's going to be their most productive player this year. I don't think he's going to get challenged enough to be that. But it's going to be that guy that when Notre Dame is playing some of the better teams this year, you're going to have to say, how do we not have him guarding their best guy? You know, like we're going to do something a little bit different this year when we play the Buckeyes in the postseason. We're going to say number 15, you follow number 4. And that's just kind of how we're going to do it. And I just think he's going to be the best cornerback in college football this year. And I don't know that it's going to be overly close. And I think that's not why he's their best defensive player, but he is their best defensive player. I think he's a special talent. And everything I've heard and seen of him so far in fall camp, I'm not like one of the questions I have about guys like Jeremiah Love and Leonard Moore and some of the top players and going into their second year is like, okay, are they still hungry to go be great, or do they start kind of buying into their own hype? That's a question, always a question when a guy sort of has that breakout season that's coming back. And I have not seen a single situation, have not heard a single doubt about that from either one of these guys. And from what we've seen in camp and what I've heard in camp, Leonard Moore is a more consistent version of what he was last year.
Yeah, I agree. Agree completely. I think Leonard Moore is going to be their most outstanding player. On top of everything that Brian said, it's just what it means to have an elite boundary corner. And just to know that you have one side of the field shored up, and that's the impact that he brings. So, Leonard Moore's mine as well.
I mean, yeah, Leonard Moore is the answer here. And for all the reasons that you guys just said, I just think he's a special player. I think he's a talented player. I think he's got all the intangibles that you want on defense. And I think he's going to prove to everybody that we are correct, that he is the most outstanding player on this team.
Real quick, we did get a super chat from Michael S. Choice, Jeremiah Love or Nicholas Singleton. That's absolutely Jeremiah Love. The argument that he outperformed Jeremiah Love in the playoff game, I don't buy. Your production is a byproduct of your offense and your running your offensive line. And I think that the most impressive play of that game was not Nicholas Singleton's. Yeah, he outrushed Jeremiah Love, but he also had a huge drop near the goal line that would have been a difference in that game. So I think their offensive line played better than Notre Dame's offensive line in the run game. Doesn't make him a better player. I could point to a million examples when a guy had more production than another guy. It doesn't mean that guy's better. If Jerry Rice doesn't plays in a game and the other team's mediocre receiver has more yards, it doesn't mean Jerry Rice wasn't the best guy in the field that day. It just means for whatever reason the offense didn't require that, and also the fact that Jeremiah Love was playing with a giant knee brace on his knee. So no, that's not a good argument in my opinion, and it's going to be Jeremiah Love. In that, it's an easy pick. But anyway, Vince, I just wanted to respond to that super chat without going back to it later.
Appreciate the super chat. Thank you very much for that. So we got one final category that we are going to hit, and this one is slightly different than most outstanding. This is MVP on both sides of the football, and MVP it is exactly what it sounds like. It's most valuable. It's the hardest to replace. It is, it's not just the straight out most talented player. It is MVP, most valuable player.
It's all of it, right, Vince? It's obviously you're not going to be the MVP because you're the best backup on the team, right? It's not like, man, you can't lose that guy because you don't have a number 3. It's a combination of just value, irreplaceability, production, clutchness. You could be the most productive player, but you disappear in the fourth quarter of games, or you're not the guy the team, even if you don't disappear, you're not the guy the team goes to. Perfect example. On 3rd and 4th down, 3rd and short last year, Jeremiah Love's the best player in the field. But who was the most valuable in those situations?
Riley Leonard.
And I would argue Jeremiah Love was even second. Because you know who else they went to in a lot of those really crucial 3rd and 4th down situations? Jaden Thomas.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's different types of value. Now, I'm not saying Jaden Thomas would be my MVP. I'm making a point that just because you are the best doesn't mean you're always the most valuable. And sometimes when you're the best, your number 2 is still better than everybody else. And, where somebody else's number 2 may make them less. So all those things go into what makes an MVP. So, Trevor, you want to kick us off with your offensive MVP?
Sure. It's the same as my most outstanding player. It's still Jeremiah Love, but it's for a different reason. It's not, to Brian's point, it's not about stats. Look, to be able to compete for a national championship, you need a certain amount of stars on your team. You need those impact players that in those moments To your point about bringing up a Jaden Thomas or a Riley Leonard, well, Riley Leonard and Jaden Thomas aren't on the roster this season. So who do you turn to in those moments? And there are other viable candidates for that. Absolutely. But there's a level of comfort, and you hear it in the players talking about Jeremiah Love this offseason. There's a level of comfort in we have the best running back in the country. And to them, it's not close. In the moments where it's, look, Notre Dame needed a score against Louisville to put the game away. Who gets schemed up? It's Jeremiah Love. What was one of the highlight-altering plays of the Orange Bowl? It was a 2-yard run. It was Jeremiah Love. Who scored the first touchdown in the 12-team college football playoff? It was Jeremiah Love when he took it 98 to the house with the flu and a bum knee. And so when I look at and I think about who's the MVP of this offense, and you could argue maybe even the MVP of this team, it's the person that's being put on the pedestal, rightfully so. I'm going with Jeremiah Love. And look, I know I'm not one of the only people that think that. You know, FanDuel has him at plus 4,000 odds to win a Heisman. I still think that's way too low, like significantly way too low. But he's being looked at as almost the mascot of this Notre Dame program. People say Notre Dame, you think of Jeremiah Love. I think he ends the season as their offensive MVP.
Me not going with Jeremiah Love says everything you need to know about my faith in Jadarian Price in the running back room. And that's really what it boils down to for me. It was this, and it changes from year to year, but there's just a couple guys in this team that I feel, Trevor, are valuable because their production's going to be good, because they're going to be impact players, but also because you're going to need them to play at that level. And if they don't, you're just not going to be good there or as good there, not championship caliber there. So I think your point is great. You need stars to win a championship. Absolutely correct. And there is no bigger star in this Notre Dame football team than Jeremiah Love. Having said that, I do believe that if for some reason, and not even just injury related, but what you just look at the USC game last year, that's an example where Jeremiah Love gets hurt on the first drive of the third quarter. He's got 99 yards rushing. USC has no answers for him. But it's a competitive ball game. It's a one-score ball game. So what do? You pop in Jadarian Price, and he rips off 2 30-plus yard runs, a touchdown run, finishes with over 100 yards in the second half alone. And that's just, Florida State is just their entire game plan is stop Jeremiah Love, stop Jeremiah Love, stop Jeremiah Love. He goes for 19 yards on 9 carries. Jadarian rips off a 65-yard touchdown run. It's you have the ability to still be excellent there if he goes down. My pick for MVP, I thought about, because I don't know who the quarterback is going to be, I'm going to stay away from whoever wins the quarterback job, although we could certainly go there because that's that final piece to the puzzle type of situation. Go ahead, Vince.
I just want to comment on the quarterback part here real quick because I agree with you. I thought about going that direction, but I didn't. And the reason being, honestly, is because whoever wins the quarterback job, I still got a lot of faith in who number 2 is. And so to your argument about
both at some point in time, depending on who gets the starting nod and how things go and different stuff like that. Right?
Your argument about Love and Price, and filling in and all of that, I feel like that kind of mirrors my thoughts on the quarterback.
Yeah,
which is why I did not go to the quarterback position. I just wanted to interject there.
No, that's a great point. And for me, it's more about just not knowing who it is. It's hard for me to project this is you're my MVP because even though I don't know who you are. This isn't like the dating game from back in the day where you're just hearing someone's voice and they got to answer questions. I need to see it. And that's why I'm going Eli Raridan. Because I don't know that there's a guy on the team who is more irreplaceable based on when you look at the depth chart than Eli Raridan. I mean, you can lose a guy like Charles Jagasol and just replace him with Gerby Lambert. You could lose an Anthony Knapp and replace him with Will Black or Styles Prescott or somebody along those lines. You lose an Ashton Craig and you can move Anthony Knapp inside, or you can put a Joe Otting in there. You lose a Malachi Fields, you got a Micah Gilbert. You lose a Jaden Greathouse or Jordan Faison, you got a Will Pauling, a KK Smith, a Logan Saldate. When I look at the tight end room, even before the injury to Kevin Bauman, there's nobody in that room like Eli Raridan, like not even close right now. James Flanagan eventually could be, but right now he's a true freshman trying to figure it all out. And they're very, very different types of players. And so when I look at it, I just think he's the guy to me that I look at and say, this is the most valuable player on the team. And like I said, I could maybe talk quarterback from the standpoint of the quarterback is going to define your ceiling this year. That's where that conversation comes into place. But like I said, I don't know who the quarterback's going to be, so I can't go there. I know who their tight end needs to be. And I know what this team looks like. I mean, Trev, you talked about how good Jeremiah Love is and how differently they're going to use him. We've talked about Malachi Fields. We've talked about Jaden Greathouse. How do you defend this football team if Eli Raridan is the player that we think he can be and stays healthy for an entire season? I don't know how you defend this offensive football team. And it gets to the point where it's like, I don't give a crap who the quarterback is. Just read the defense, get the ball where it's supposed to go. And then, make some big plays along the way. But, you got dudes everywhere. And I think he is the most irreplaceable of those dudes. And again, we're defining MVP, not like the NFL, where it's a most outstanding player that's given to it's the most valuable player on your football team. And I think Jeremiah Love's phenomenal, but as we saw last season, you can take him off the field and you're getting very similar type of play. You take Eli Raridan off the field of this team, and you're getting a very different type of play.
For me, it's always fun going last because I feel like sometimes you debunk my guy that I've selected, and that's okay because I feel like I try to take the definition of what we're talking about as far as MVP and replaceable and all of those different things and being valuable in the moment on third down and all of those kinds of things. And I feel like we're talking about MVP, and this is what I think is going to be the case, 4 months from now at the end of the season when we look back and it's be like, I'm so glad that this kid was on the team because he made plays when it counted, when we needed that third down, when we needed to move the chains, all of those kinds of different things. And so for me, it's Jaden Greathouse. That's where I went. I think he finished the year super strong. I think that the staff has an incredible amount of confidence in Jaden Greathouse right now. When we sat down with Marcus Freeman back in May and they were talking about, the way that they feel about Jaden Greathouse is like, even when he's covered, he's not, he's open, throw him the football. I feel like that's how you talk about an MVP. Like that's how you talk about a kid that you trust in the moment. And we started to see that down the stretch with Riley Leonard and Jaden Greathouse, right? It was okay. Well, he might be covered and you know what? I don't care. I'm going to put the ball where he can go after it and go get it. And I think he repaid Riley Leonard in that regard as well.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Notre Dame doesn't wait till they're down in the second half of games this year to start
Agreed.
throwing Jaden Greathouse football in those type of situations.
100%.
That'd be super awesome, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would be. It would be super awesome. And I feel like they know who Jaden Greathouse is now, and they are going to use him more and allow him to be the player that he can be. And so, again, I'm not going to repeat everything that you just said about why Jeremiah Love is an amazing player because I just picked him as my most outstanding offensive player.
Mm-hmm.
The MVP definition is a little bit different.
It's different.
And so that's why.
That's why we made it 2 awards.
Yeah.
There's no discussion on who is the absolute best player on this football team.
Right.
This is a different conversation.
Yeah. It's a fun conversation. So that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show. And so make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends.
We didn't do defense, Vince.
Whoops. You can still do all those things, but we're going to talk about defense now and give our MVP.
While we're talking about the defensive MVP, you can go ahead and hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell, and sign up for the message board.
Yeah, all of those things. Do all of those things, but make sure you listen to who our defensive MVP is going to be. Trevor, I'm going to let you go first on this one. Who is your defensive MVP?
I got Drake Bowen as my defensive MVP for everything that he brings to the table that's not equivalent to production. I think that he's able to hold this defense together from a leadership standpoint going into year 2 as a starter. I think that he's going to end up as a defensive captain of this team. From a production standpoint, this linebacker room is loaded. A lot of where my MVP thought comes from is, yes, I think production can be replaced by certain players, but there's, I don't know what you want to call it, a role, an aura, a feeling of when certain players are on the field that it's just not the same if they're not. That was partially why I went with Jeremiah Love as my offensive.
Fair.
Drake Bowen on defense. It's, yes, you very easily could slot in Kingston. You very easily could slot in Jaden Ausberry or Bodie Cahoon, and the list goes on and on. But the level of confidence that Drake Bowen brings to that defense, and watching his evolution from the Texas A&M game to where he was at in the USC game was night and day. And I think that he's somebody that defense can't afford to lose. Because I think that you could have other players step in and also finish games with 10 tackles and they would still be productive. But I don't know if they would have the leadership where, look, if it's a crunch time moment of the game and you need to look into the eyes of somebody in the defensive huddle, I don't know if they're going to be able to be as stoic and as calm as what Drake Bowen brings to that defense. So defensive MVP, I'm going with number 34.
I have no idea what direction you're going to go, Brian, but I want to piggyback off of okay. So that's where I'm at as well. I think, look, we picked him as the leader in tackles. You know, we all think that he's a very good football player, but beyond that, he's a leader. He's the glue. He's the green dot. He's all of those different things. And I think that he has immersed himself in Notre Dame football. Look, he's an outstanding baseball player, and he just put that in the rear view, and he's like, I'm a Notre Dame football player. And I think that says something too, because, you know, when he came to Notre Dame, it was like, I want to play both. They're both equally important to me. And he has just thrown himself into Notre Dame football, and it shows. Like he is the glue of this defense. And, you know, we all wonder about Chris Ash and what he's going to do and what this is going to look like. As long as you got Drake Bowen on the field, I'm just not that worried about it. I just feel like he's going to keep this team focused. They're going to be going in the right direction. They're going to be lining up correctly. Like, he's the quarterback of the defense. He's the MVP.
I completely agree. This is an easy one for us. We all agree on this one. We did have a super chat from Michael S. Choice, Eli Raritan of the 2012 tight end, whose name you forgot, a.k.a. John Mackey Award winner Tyler Eifert. I'll go with all due respect, as much as I love Eli Raritan, I'll go with Tyler Eifert on that one. So now you can do the outro.
Well, he knew he was good. You know, that's why he brought him up. He knew he was good. You know,
love you, Michael S., but come on, bro.
Appreciate the super chat, man.
Come on, bro.
But yeah, that's going to do it for part one of the Notre Dame prediction podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, all of those fun things. And make sure you jump on the message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. There's all kinds of good intel over there, and the intel just keeps on coming, and Brian keeps putting it on the board. So that's where you want to be. It is the best money can buy. Please make sure that you check it out. You will not be disappointed, because when we get intel, when we get information, that is where it goes. It does not come to the podcast. It does not come to the YouTube channel. Eventually it will, but if you want it in the moment and you want to be the first to know, you got to jump over at the boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com, the premium message boards at Irish Breakdown. That is where you want to be for sure. All right, part two of today's show. We are going to give our Notre Dame team predictions, and we're going to kind of rattle through some of our bigger picture predictions and what that is going to look like. And so, of course, here at Irish Breakdown, presented by FanDuel on the Believe Network, all of those fun things. We are glad that you are here. This is our fun show. This is the one that we get to do, that we are looking at the entire season and predicting what Notre Dame is going to be. And, you know, when we sat down at the beginning of the summer, we were kind of figuring out the plan, and Brian was like, okay, we could do this like on a Thursday in the afternoon, like when you're at school. And I was like, no, sir. We are doing this one on a
I
Saturday.
do not remember that conversation happening at all.
We are doing this on a
I think
Saturday.
Vince made that up.
I did not make this up. We are doing it together. I will be a part of it. And no, this is a fun show to do, and we are going to predict what Notre Dame is going to do this season.
Yeah. It's going to be fun, guys. And you know, this is kind of, you know, we talked earlier in part one of our show today about the ceiling and the floor of this football team. And this is kind of, this is where this is really pertinent of how do we find out just how good this team is going to be? And this is really where we can have fun with the superlatives and the MVPs. And all. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who ends up as the MVP. It doesn't matter who ends up as this, the most outstanding offensive lineman, whatever. It matters is, do you have a W at the end of the game? Like, do you have more offensive? Do you have more points as a team? I don't care if you get them offensively, defensively, special teams. It doesn't matter. Is your defense elite and your offense is just okay? Is your offense okay? Is your defense elite? Are they both elite? Are they both? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Do you have more points than the other team has at the end of every Saturday or in the case of the opener, a Sunday. That's what matters. And style points don't matter at the end of the day. If you win all your games, it doesn't matter how you looked doing it. Like the 2001 Miami team was way more sexy than the 2002 Miami team was way more sexy than the 2002 Ohio State team. Who was hoisting up the trophy at the end of the game? Ohio State was. Why? They had more points. It ain't that hard. And we're going to have some fun kind of looking at just the schedule a little bit. But at the end of the day, fellas, it boils down to this is you get judged on the wins and losses at the end of the day. And when people that remember great running backs, you remember great running backs because they were part of great teams. Do we look at Reggie Brooks the same way if he was part of a 6-6 football team? I don't know that we do. Do we look at Rocket Ismail and Tony Rice, especially the way that we do with the admiration we have of Tony Rice, if he wasn't part of great teams that won a ton of football games, including a national championship? At the end of the day, I don't think that we do. If Brady Quinn's career in his last 2 years statistically looks the same as it did, but he played for teams that had the same record that he had his first 2 years, do we look at him the same way that we do now? I don't know that we do. And I think that's the fun part of this whole thing, guys, is this is really what matters. I don't care who leads the team in receiving yards or catches or touchdowns, as long as you got more points than the other team at the end of the game, and you can do that every single week. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Fair enough. So we are going to kind of break down the schedule here a little bit. I mean, we've done a schedule show in the past, but we're talking more kind of big picture and what are the toughest games and things of that nature. And so we were tasked with coming up with the toughest games on Notre Dame's schedule. I think we can all agree that A&M and Miami are on this list. I'd be shocked if they were not on everybody's list. But in addition to those two, what other games are you guys circling that you're like, okay, these are tough games for Notre Dame, whether it's where it falls on the schedule, whether it's just because they're a really good team or projects to be a very good, whatever your criteria is, what are the next toughest games for you, Trevor?
Yeah, outside of those two that to start their season, when I look at who Notre Dame has coming up, my third toughest ranked game that I looked at was USC. Now, I also think that USC is going to be much improved this year, but for all of the reasons of it being a rivalry game, everything that's going into it, it's a night game at Notre Dame Stadium. I think they're going to be prepared for it. But USC was one of the very few teams last year in the regular season that gave them fits. One of the few. And I think that they're going to have a little bit of addition by subtraction. And I think that now slowly, because some of it was because their hand was forced, but I had some questions about Lincoln Riley last year and some members on the team kind of understanding what went into the Notre Dame rivalry. And if they wanted to, if they thought it was as big as how Notre Dame fans viewed it. And now I think that's starting to come to light a little bit. And so I have USC as their third toughest game this year, especially for the implications of it could very well be the last one on the regular season schedule for a little bit of time, unfortunately.
Boo.
So I think that I know, and I think that adds a little bit to it as well. My fourth hardest game for Notre Dame this year is on the road against Pitt. I'm also a believer that I think Pitt's going to be a much better team than what people advertise. And you're on the road. It's going to be in November. I think that the backfield combination of Desmond Reed and Eli Holstein, if he's healthy, I think is going to give them some fits. I think it's going to be the best linebacking core that they also go up against this year. And so I have Pitt as my number 4 most difficult team. And number 5 was tough because I was tied between both. I was tied between either on the road against Arkansas or at home against NC State. I think NC State's going to be much more improved. I think that they're going to have the better team. But I don't know what I'm going to weigh more, just being on the road in that environment, first time playing a team in program history, or the more talented team. I ultimately erred on the side of Arkansas for the SEC implications of it. Being a difficult environment to play in. NC State was a very close one, but I'm sure that they will be referenced later on in the show. Probably you won't have to wait too much longer to hear about them. But those are my top 5 toughest games.
I might have had them on my list, Trev, if the game was being played at night. I think the fact it's being played like 11 a.m. their time, I don't know that it's going to be as difficult of an environment at 11 a.m., which is the time the game will kick off in Fayetteville. So I think your points overall are valid. We keep hearing about how tough of a place it is to play, and we're going to find out. I think for me, I did have a question for you too, Trev. Vince obviously said Miami A&M are 1 and 2. I would like to hear your order.
Yeah, I have Texas A&M at 1 and Miami at 2.
Okay, same. Are we also all in agreement that that's the order? Okay,
100%, 100%. Yes.
Okay. My third toughest game this season is NC State. I think there's several elements to it. I don't think they're the third best team that Notre Dame is going to play. This is toughest game. I think there's some matchup things about NC State that are like, I think this could be a little bit of a concern. Obviously, CJ Bailey being a dynamic player, he's going to have a very good group of pass catchers to throw to. The defense is very opportunistic or tries to be opportunistic. And the fact that I think it's a bit of a trap game because it falls in between two big games. I think to your point, Trevor, if a lot of Notre Dame fans are going to look at the schedule and be like, at Arkansas, Boise State, USC, of course they're all bigger games than USC, or NC State. And that's part of what makes NC State here for me, is that it is a bit of the trap game aspect of it. And I know that one of the things that we're going to do is, and I'll just give it now, is, what's our individual trap game? This is mine. This is my trap game, which also then makes it one of the toughest games, because the matchup is tougher than maybe some people think. And the timing of it, to me, also makes it a little bit, okay, are you feeling good about yourself? You've beat Miami, A&M, you beat Arkansas on the road, you just beat Boise State, you got USC coming up the next week. Is this the team you overlook? And that's what gives me a little bit of pause about this game. So that's why they're my number 3. I have USC number 4. Look, I know that Notre Dame fans, and we see it in the chat, they're going to kill USC, and they very well might. But Marcus Freeman in 3 games against USC lost to them, blew them out, and then was in an absolute battle for 4 quarters. So is it just the 23 game was the anomaly, or is just when USC comes here under Lincoln Riley, they get stomped? Like, we're going to find that out this year. We don't know the answer to that. But I think this is a talented football team, not as talented as they've been in the past. I think Jaden Maeva is going to be better in year 2. The key for him is going to be, can you limit the turn? I don't mind aggressive turnovers, Trevor, but he just has somewhere like, dude, that's not being aggressive. You just threw it up, and you didn't see that guy, and he's got to limit those type of things. I worry about, can they run the football? There's a lot of things that I question, but here's the thing I'm confident in: you're going to get their best. And I think part of the reason that USC got blown out in 2023, there was great game plan by Al Golden, and there's a lot of different things that factored into it. That was a terrible matchup for USC, and it was terrible timing for USC because they were feeling good about themselves. They had beat Notre Dame the year before convincingly. They had the Heisman Trophy winner. Notre Dame had lost 2 of their last 3 games, and was getting stomped, by Louisville. They lost Ohio State, barely beat Duke. There was no respect of Notre Dame in that game, none, and they paid a very dear price for it. And I think at times Notre Dame didn't have enough respect for USC last year in that game. This is a game where I think that Notre Dame's going to want a little bit of payback, but I think USC is going to come into this game confident, thinking, "Hey, we could have beat them last year. Not should have, but we could have beat them last year." And that's what I think makes us tough. And I think their roster is talented too. In my number 5 game, Trev, I kind of made a face when you said Pitt, because I'm like, man, I'm going to have this Pitt game in my top 5, and I'm going to be like super smart and savvy, and no one's going to think about Pitt. And then here you go having them number 4. But I think all your points are absolutely correct. It's a tough matchup. They're one of only 3 defenses that Notre Dame faces this year that I think has the second level speed to give Notre Dame some problems in the run game. Now, if their first level gets dominated, it won't matter. But if their D-line just holds up at all, they have the kind of linebackers that can give Notre Dame's run game some problems. It's at Pitt. This is a place that Notre Dame has not always played that great. Now, I think their last trip to Pitt, I believe, was all the way back in 2015, wasn't it, Vince? And they dominated Pitt that game. Mm-hmm. But that's a rare occasion. That hasn't happened a ton. No, they played in 2020, and beat them 45-3 in 2020. Much closer game than the final score. That was their quarterback was hurt. It was COVID. I don't even count that year. I just think this Pitt team is scrappy, and I think they could give Notre Dame a game. I thought about Boise State. I thought about Navy. I thought about Arkansas. I think there's a lot of good candidates for this number 5 spot. I went with Pitt because of the timing of it. I think the fact that it's where it's placed, and then it being late in November in Pittsburgh, it's not going to be an easy place to play. Notre Dame's going to have to bring it that night.
So you guys have talked about all of mine, but maybe in a little bit of a different order, which is always interesting. I'm actually pretty high on USC, and so I have them at number 3. Again, the other two are still the top 2, but then it's 3, 4, 5. Is where we can have our opinions, I guess, a little bit more. But USC is my number 3 for many of the reasons that you guys both stated. I think that it's still going to be early enough in the season where USC may still believe that they're a good football team, and they may try to bring that to Indiana. And so we'll see how that works out for them.
I'm sorry. I just love how Vince is trying to give credit to USC, but can't help himself but throw shade the entire time.
Wait till the
next
next
these little petty comebacks. I think it's brilliant, Vince.
Just wait till
while you're giving them credit for being the 3rd best team on the toughest game on the schedule. They think they're going to be a good team still. They have yet to realize they're USC. I friggin' love it. Thank you.
Yeah. They're still number 3 for me. My number 4 team, and I do think that if this team was coming to South Bend, this would not be on my list because I don't think Arkansas is a great football team, but I do think that going to Arkansas is going to be a thing. And I know that they are playing at 11 o'clock a.m., which is a benefit to Notre Dame. But it's still Notre Dame coming into Fayetteville for the first time ever. And I feel like that is going to get the locals all stirred up. And they're going to be with their cowbells, and they're going to be doing
Mississippi State.
Is that Mississippi State?
Yeah.
What?
They do the
hooey piggy thing where they're all up here and doing this.
Hooey piggy thing. What is wrong with you? What? Just keep going, Vince. Just keep going. You're on a roll.
Listen, I watched the SEC
over when the Germans
documentary.
bombed Pearl Harbor?
Right. Was it over? Just let him go.
Vince is on a roll. Just keep going, bro.
Just let him go. I do think it's going to be a very different. It might be the most difficult road environment, depending on what Miami looks like at night. That's going to be number 1. But I think this could be a very close number 2, even though it's in the morning, basically. I still think it's going to be a tough environment. And so that's why Arkansas is up there for me. The next one's NC State. And I will just, since you already did it, Brian, it is also my trap game because of where it falls on the schedule. Boise, USC. I like the fact that obviously it's at home. I think that's a good thing for Notre Dame, but it's a trap game. I think it's going to be very, very easy. Number 1, coming off the Boise State game, there's going to be a lot of publicity around that game. It's the Irish wear green. It's all the things, right? And then it's, oh my gosh, this could be the last time they ever play USC, and NC State could just fall through the cracks. And the thing is, not only do they have the opportunity to be a very good football team or a good football team, you don't want to sleep on them. Right? You don't want to be looking ahead to USC. You don't want to be resting on your laurels of maybe what you've done the first few weeks of the season. I think NC State has all the capability of being a trap game for Notre Dame, and it worries me. The NC State game actually does worry me a little bit from a trap game perspective.
I just think anytime you've got a dynamic quarterback, that makes a team capable of upsetting you. It does.
Yeah.
No, of course, Notre Dame's upset last year. What's ironic is that's not the type of team that's upset Notre Dame.
Right, this is true.
The teams that have upset Notre Dame are more because Notre Dame's offense sucks and doesn't get to do the job. I mean, Northern Illinois' quarterback wasn't a dual threat guy, and neither was Marshall's, and neither was Stanford's in 2022. But this is a different type of game. This is a game where you could get beat and not play terrible.
For sure.
That's what makes it a little bit different for me. Trev, what was your trap game?
Let me explain. I also have NC State as my trap game that we explained, but I wanted to talk about my number 2 potential trap game just to kind of switch it up. It is Pitt. That's why I have them on this schedule for me. And here's why. Pittsburgh could be one of 2 teams going into that matchup. It's their 10th game of the year. I could see them being 7-2. And then I could also see them being some sort of 4-5, 5-4, depending on health of the team or who's available, how they perform. And so I look at the schedule and I look at it and it's like, look, you get Navy at home at night the week before. I always get a little bit wary of new defensive coordinators game planning around Navy. Now, like I said earlier, he's going to benefit. Chris Ash is going to benefit from the fact that Al Washington is back and Max Bulla and Mike Mickens and Marcus Freeman's the head coach who has now spent essentially this will be his 5th year preparing for Navy. But I do always get a little bit nervous around how the defensive coordinator handles business around that week. We also still don't know the time of the kickoff for the Pitt game either. I could see it being a noon game, or I could see it being a night game. Those are kind of like the 2 areas that I could see it being. Neither of them I love. You go from night game to noon game, or you have back-to-back night games with the second one being on the road. So there's a lot of moving factors to Pitt, but you combine that with, to Brian's point about NC State, this is a team that could beat you even if you don't have your worst day on the football field. So I could see that potentially being one. It's a game right before senior day. So not as big as the USC game, but there is still something to potentially look ahead to. And I could see Pitt being a very underrated team. If they go into that matchup 7-2, I don't see Notre Dame overlooking Pitt. If they enter that matchup 5-4, that's what makes me a little nervous.
Dude, go look at what happened to Syracuse last year at that night game against Pitt. I mean, Syracuse was rolling coming into that game, fellas. They'd only had 1 loss. I still don't know how. Weirdest team in college football last year. The Stanford Cardinal. 3-9 team. Their wins over 10 win Syracuse and 9 win Louisville. Just whatever. But that's a different point for a completely different day. But Syracuse is rolling along. They're 5-1. They're coming off of a big back-to-back road wins over UNLV and NC State. And they had a bye week. They had 12 days in between the game, plenty of time. And Pitt steamrolled them. I mean, it was over at halftime. I mean, they picked off Kyle McCord like multiple times in the first half. They're running them back for touchdowns. You're just like, oh my gosh. This is one of the, this game is just got out of hand really fast. I mean, Pitt in that game, guys, what was a wild stat, Pitt had 217 yards of offense in that game. 217 yards of offense, and they beat Syracuse 41-13. And it's not that their offense played bad. Their offense had almost no chance to do anything because they kept returning pick sixes and turnovers, getting them the ball deep in the territory. It is not an easy place to play. And if you're not locked in, like to your point, Trev, if Notre Dame plays their game, they smack Pitt. But if you're just solid, if you're just, okay, this is a team that can beat you. You don't have to play terrible like you did against Northern Illinois. And that's the risk that you run against a team like Pitt. And like you said, that when you look at the timing of it and when they play and all those different things that kind of factor into it, I get you. I would have to agree that it's in my conversation, and is because you're right after the triple option, right before senior day. That's where it's fit into there. And maybe they're feeling good. Maybe they're undefeated and they're, a number 1 ranked team and they're feeling really good about themselves. And this 5-3 Pitt team is like, we're not going to worry about those guys, and you overlook them. I think that's kind of what happened a little bit with USC last year. And so I'm with you on that. I think another potential trap game for me, guys, is Arkansas.
Yeah.
I could see, I don't think that's an overly tough game because I just don't think their roster is good enough to make it one of the 5 toughest games. Everything you guys said about environment, 100% agree with. I just look at that roster and I'm just like, I don't see it. But I do worry if they're coming off maybe a couple losses. They play at Ole Miss and at Memphis right before that game. And I worry about it being early for Notre Dame. It's an 11 a.m. game for the Notre Dame players. Or it's a noon game for the Notre Dame players. They don't play a lot of noon games at Notre Dame, and they've had some rough games at noon. Not always, but they've had some. Is that an overlooking them game? You beat Miami, you beat A&M, you just annihilated Purdue, and you got Boise State in that all-green game like Vince was talking about. They're in the conversation for me as well. And I think you can make a case that that Arkansas might even be more of a trap game than Pitt, simply because the one thing that helps them a little bit with Pitt is the rivalry aspect of it. It is a bit of a rival. So maybe that helps them be a little bit more alive for it, where what's your motivation to be fired up to play Arkansas, especially if Arkansas is maybe coming off of a couple losses.
Yeah.
So that's where that game could concern me a little bit.
Well, I was just about to say Arkansas is already being overlooked. I mean, FanDuel right now has them at they're the 13th best odds to win the conference right now at plus 17.5. And they're being severely overlooked. Now, to Brian's point, I don't think they have the roster to compete for the conference championship, let alone be able to beat Notre Dame when they host them. But point being, they will be a team that's kind of being nationally overlooked already.
Brian, I think you had a question that you were going to throw out.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys two things. Is what do you, when you look at the schedule and you're making your predictions, and this may be a different answer, but I want to know what you view as the toughest stretch of 3 to 4 games of the season after the first two. And then what is the stretch that you think will ultimately define this season? It could be the same. It could not be the same. And I'll give you my answer first. And I'm curious what you guys think about this. I actually think the toughest stretch of football is in November. But it's part to be because they will have faced the defining part already. And the defining part to me is Arkansas to USC. Because one of two things is going to be true. Of course, 3 things could be true, but I think one of 2 things is true. One is you're 2-0 coming out of the A&M game and you're feeling really good about yourselves. Or B, you're 1-1 and you lost one of those games, and now there's a lot of pressure on you to say, hey, how are we going to roll? And everybody say, well, they did it last year. Different team, different leaders, different coaches, different team. You can't just assume they're always going to do it. And I say how you perform from Purdue. Let's just start with Purdue. From Purdue to USC, to me, that is the stretch that's going to define your season. We literally just mentioned 3 potential trap games during that stretch. Yep. Arkansas, Boise, NC State. We have NC State and USC. All of us have at least 2 of us have 2 of those guys in there. Trev doesn't have NC State, but they're his trap game. You're like, that to me, that stretch will define this season. Who they are coming out of the USC game is going to say, okay, we're going to go into it, and their October schedule's over on October 18th. It's over because they have a bye the next week, and their next game's not till November 1st. We're going to know by the middle of October if Notre Dame's a championship caliber team or at least a playoff caliber team. If they got 2 losses at that point in time, they're in trouble as far as getting into the playoffs. It's possible, but it's going to be tough. They're going to need help. They no longer can. If Notre Dame's only got 1 loss at the end of the season, they control their own destiny. Let's be honest. In a 12-team playoff, they do. They're not going to be left out with 1 loss. 2 losses now, you better hope somebody else gets beat. You absolutely better hope somebody else gets beat. And so if you can manage that slate of games, Purdue to USC, I think that's going to define their season. And then that leads to what makes November tough. You've had to put a lot into the season so far. You had to travel to Miami. You had to play A&M. You had to go to Arkansas. You had that tough 3 straight home games against Boise, NC State, and USC. And then in November, you've got 3 games away from home. You've got a trip against rivals and teams that have had some historic upsets of you. Stanford has had multiple back in the 90s, and then, of course, recently – Boston College with the epic 93 upset. They've had some other games. And then, of course, Pitt's had knocked off Notre Dame in some big games at times. And then you've got the triple option mixed in right in there against what I think is going to be a really good Navy team. And you're worn down. You're tired. Injuries are piling up. And you're not playing opponents that necessarily pique your interest the same way you get in September. That to me makes that a tough stretch. And like you said, Trev, there's good football teams you're going to face during that stretch also. And so to me, it's the defining stretch leads to the toughest stretch. How do you guys see that? Do you see it the same way? Do you see it differently? Do you think one stretch is kind of for both? I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on this.
So when you originally tasked us with this question and I was looking at the schedule, my initial thought was, the defining stretch is still the first 2 games, but we're not talking about the first 2 gaes, right? So the defining stretch.
Yeah, it was after that stretch.
Correct.
Because if we're talking about the most important stretch, I mean, obviously
the first 2.
Or the toughest, it's that
right.
first 2 games, of course.
100%. And that springboards you into the rest of the season and what the rest of the season is going to look like. I mean, bottom line. But the 4-game stretch of Arkansas to USC is what obviously stood out to me. I mean, that is the stretch of most importance. But then defining is going to be how they finish it off. That is going to be super important because now all of a sudden all of those games are magnified and all of those players are all of those teams that are playing Notre Dame are looking at it. Okay, we can spoil their season, and those are scary teams. And I'm not even talking about specifically the teams that are on Notre Dame's schedule. I'm talking in general. When you are playing teams that have nothing to lose except to spoil your season, those are scary teams. And you got to put those teams out of their misery early. Like, that's what you have to do as a championship level football team. And so the most important is that stretch from, Boise to USC. But the most telling for me as to whether this is going to be a championship level team is going to be at the end of the season. Can you do what you're supposed to do in those games? Can you put those teams away the way that you're supposed to leading into the playoff? Are you a championship level team? Do you have a championship level mentality? That's what I need to see. Can you go out to the West Coast and, end Stanford's season the way it needs to be ended? Put them out of their misery, right? Let Andrew Luck start thinking about next year. Can you do what you need to do on senior night against Syracuse? All of those different things. That tells me whether this team is a championship level team. Yeah, the wins are important early on, all of that. It's, are you doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it? That's why those last few games are going to be uber important to me, because everybody's going to have them penciled in, the playoff, and they're going to be talking brackets and all of those things. All the noise is going to be prevalent in November for Notre Dame. Okay, well, you got to go take care of business against opponents that you're going to be heavily favored against. What's that look like? That's going to be important to me.
Yeah, as far as toughest stretch goes, I think I still got to err on the side of September 27th to October 18th. You don't get a bye. You play 2 programs for the first time in your program's history, on the road against Arkansas, at home against a ranked Boise State team, and probably will still be ranked by the time they get to October 4th. You get NC State, which is your trap game, and then USC. From a football opponent standpoint, I think that's your toughest. But where I do, and Brian, I agree with a lot of what you said, but where I think the defining part of their season will be that stretch of November is, look, you get 5 games in November. And if you end it very similar to how you ended last year, what gave us confidence that Notre Dame was going to go on the run that they did? It wasn't just because they beat Florida State, and it wasn't just because they beat Virginia and Army and USC on the road. It's because, maybe you can't use the word dominate for USC, but for all intents and purposes, it was still a 14-point game in a game where they never led your rival on the road. That's somewhat of a dominating performance. But that is what defined it for me, to let me know that Notre Dame was gearing up to go on a run. I would have felt a little bit differently if they beat a really bad Florida State team at home like 27-10. But they didn't. They beat them 52-3. In a sloppy game against Virginia that was just filled with weird calls and bad execution. It was one of the offensive line's less impressive performances of the season. You still won by 21 points, and then you go out to Yankee Stadium and you beat Army by 35, a good ranked Army team in the Shamrock Series. I think that November stretch is what's going to define Notre Dame's season, big picture, because if they're playing opponents where, look, every opponent that they have in the month of November, I confidently can say that Notre Dame has a far superior roster top to bottom. Far superior. But if they go in and they're getting those like 21-14 wins, and they're winning 17-10, that's going to give me an indicator of, okay, how far is this team truly going to go in the postseason? You might have one of those, but it's going to give me significantly less confidence of their chances in the postseason. So I'm going toughest stretches from September 27th to October 18th. But I do think the defining stretch will be in the month of November.
I love it. Thanks for answering that question for me, fellas. So, hey, here's the final piece, guys. We're going to go to the playoffs next, and we're not going to give you all of our Notre Dame prediction, but we're going to give you our Notre Dame regular season predictions. So here's what we're going to do. We're not going to go game by game. We thought about going game by game, but as we give our records, you'll understand why we don't go game by game when we do it. But I want to go Trevor, Vince, and then I'll finish up. I want you guys to give your regular season prediction for Notre Dame and tell people if you do or do not have Notre Dame in the college football playoff.
Well, I'll get us started then. I have Notre Dame going undefeated.
I wanted to start it off right. That's why I wanted Trevor to go first. Tell us why, Trev.
I have Notre Dame going undefeated. When I look at their schedule from top to bottom, there is not a single program on there that I see, a team that Notre Dame faces, that I can confidently say they have even – there are some that may have comparable rosters, but not top to bottom. And for the majority of Notre Dame's schedule, they have the far superior roster. I don't know if I see a Northern Illinois loss on there, because I don't know if there's a program on there capable of upsetting Notre Dame like what Northern Illinois did. Marcus Freeman answered the question for me of if he's able to get his team ready for the big moment. You had the postseason run that you went on. Notre Dame was ready for Ohio State. They weren't shocked like they were in 2012 against Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that the game plan was a little bit lackluster. But when I look at Miami, I have no fear that Notre Dame is going to be – Marcus Freeman's going to get this team ready to play down in Hard Rock. At home, I know he's 1-2 in home games, home openers, but it's not Marshall, it's not Northern Illinois, and it's not Tennessee State. It is a probable top 15 ranked SEC team who you faced last year on the road to open up your season. If you can get through that stretch unscathed, I'm confident in saying that Notre Dame goes undefeated and they go 12-0. I would be more nervous if their game right after Texas A&M wasn't Purdue. I could eat my words on this. I don't think that I will. I don't see a game bad enough that Notre Dame plays where they lose to Purdue. That's what I mean by how they don't have that Northern Illinois, like they weren't focused for Northern Illinois, but Northern Illinois was good enough to beat Notre Dame in Notre Dame Stadium. Yeah. I just don't think that that's Purdue this year. And then again, I think it's going to help them out that they have two teams for the first time in program history. I don't think Marcus Freeman goes and lays a goose egg there. And then you have USC and you're rolling. So I have Notre Dame going 12-0.
What say you, Vince?
Well, as I really wanted to put Notre Dame at 12-0, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But again, the reason we're not going through this game by game by game is because I would pick Notre Dame to win every game. I would.
If we just took every game out with no context, yes, correct.
That's absolutely correct. And we sat here at this time last year, Brian, and I said Notre Dame was going to be 11-1, and I didn't know what game that they were going to lose. I could have gone through every single game on the schedule, and I would not have picked Northern Illinois, but I ended up being right that they went 11-1, right? I'm kind of in the same boat this year. I'm picking 11-1, but I don't know which game that'll be. Is it going to be a tough game like one of the first two? Or is it going to be a game that nobody anticipates, to Trevor's point, like a Purdue? Like, I don't know the answer to that. I am hoping that Notre Dame has gotten to a point where they're not going to lose to those, like make those head-scratching losses like they have in the first 3 years of Marcus Freeman's tenure. I'm hoping that they've gotten past that and that they're not going to overlook teams and, all of those different things. It's hard to go 12-0. It is. It's hard to go 12-0. I think you've made the point, Brian, on numerous occasions that of all of Alabama's national championships under Nick Saban, I think he went undefeated, twice or something like that? I always forget what the exact stat is.
He only had 2 of his 7 titles. He had 2 undefeated teams, and the COVID year is one of them.
There you go.
The 09 team and the 20 team were national champs. His LSU team was not undefeated. His 11 Alabama team that won a title was not. His 12 Alabama team that won a title was not. And his 15 Alabama team that won a title was not undefeated.
It's hard. It's hard to go 12-0.
Neither was his 17 Alabama team.
Yeah, it's hard to go 12-0. And do I think this team is talented enough to do it? Of course. Do I think they have the right head coach in place? Of course. And everything underneath him. I absolutely think they have everything in place. It's just really hard to go 12-0. And so I'm hedging my bets and I'm going 11-1. And I just couldn't tell you what one that is going to be.
Vince, that's where I'm at. And I've just felt all offseason I'm going to pick him to go 12-0. I'm going to pick him to go 12-0. I'm going to pick him to go 12-0. I kept saying it to myself. But there's a couple things that give me pause. And the first one is what you said. It's hard to go undefeated. I mean, it really is. Even that great 19 LSU team had a couple games. They almost lost. They almost lost to Texas. They almost lost to Auburn that year. And so I don't know what game they're going to lose. I don't think it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be one of the first two games. It was funny. I was speaking at this Notre Dame group last year, and they have some fun. They have us make predictions and stuff like that. And I think the questions were like, will they beat A&M? And I was like, yes. Will they beat USC? Yes. Will they beat Florida State? Yes. And then what's their record? 11-1. Who are they going to lose to? I have no idea. And when I look at the schedule, what leads me to it is Trev's right. They have a better roster than everybody they play. And once they get past A&M, a pretty significant better roster than anybody they play. Alabama had a pretty significantly better roster than Ole Miss, and in 13, and what did they lose to them in 13 and 14? They had a better roster than A&M in 2012. They had a better roster than LSU in 2011 when they lost at home 9-6. And Notre Dame had a better roster than Northern Illinois, and Notre Dame had a better roster than Stanford. And I'm not talking about the Stanford team that Notre Dame lost to in 2022. I'm talking about the two that Lou Holtz lost to in the 1990s. I mean, that's just the way college football works. Clemson in 2016 had a way better roster than what Pitt had, and Pitt beat them in Clemson. It's just hard to go undefeated. And there's enough teams from Miami, A&M, kind of Boise, kind of Arkansas, NC State, USC, Pitt, Boston College, Navy. There's enough teams that have the ability to beat you if you have an off night. That is why I just can't go undefeated. But I'm sitting there listening to Trevor like, dang it, I should have gone 12-0 because his points are valid. They're a better team than everybody they play. I just think it's like I said, it's tough to go undefeated in college football. And so I have them going 11-1. I'll say this, I'd be a lot less surprised if they go undefeated this year than I was last year. I was pretty confident they were going to lose. Trev, Vince, you and I talked about this last year. I was like, I just don't know that this team there's just too many questions to say that they're going to run the table. I just would have never guessed that it would have been Northern Illinois.
Right.
I had some other teams on my radar.
Right.
I am more confident that this team can run the table than last year's team, just because they can just out-talent teams in a way that's even greater than what they were able to do last year. And that's why I think that when we look back, I could certainly see Trevor being the one that's correct on this one.
As one time, I will not be upset about being wrong
Correct.
in any way. I will not be upset about it. So, do we have any more?
We're going to wrap up this section, fellas, and then going to lead into the college football playoff with answering a simple question. Do you have Notre Dame in the college football playoff? I'll answer. We'll go Trev, Vince, and then Vince, you can get us ready for the next section. So, do I have Notre Dame making the college football playoff 11-1? Absolutely, I do. I have them hosting. I'll give you a little teaser. And my infamous bracket will be shown when we get to this next one. So, Trev, do you have Notre Dame in the college football playoff? Duh.
Yeah.
You have them 12-0. Yes.
Yeah, I do.
And Vince, same for you.
Of course. And I also have them hosting, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. So make sure you stay tuned because our college football playoff prediction is coming up next. But make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends. And of course, jump on the boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com, our premium message board where all the intel is shared. We are pouring more and more resources into the premium message board. And so I want to make sure that everybody gets over there and signs up for that wonderful opportunity, because we are kind of taking some things away from YouTube and the podcast and making it more strictly premium message board. So you definitely want to get over there. We want to make sure that that is a value to everyone. And I do believe that it is. And so definitely check out our premium message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com.
Before we go to the next section, fellas, I did want to bring up two quick super chats real quick. One from Raymond Hart, and my guy Raymond. Thank you so much for this, Raymond. And Raymond is a member of our message board. He goes, just want to give my wife Barbara a great big I love you for allowing me to take a break from life and allowing me to be here for IB today. And Raymond, I know you guys are definitely going through some things as a family, and we've chatted a little bit about that, and we're certainly praying for you very much, my friend. And thank you very much, Barbara, for letting Raymond hang out today. This is the one show he could not miss. So we greatly appreciate it. And then Detroit Hunter says, I just want to give a bigger thanks to my wife, Sydney, than Ray gave to Barbara for letting me hang out on IB all day while grilling. Yeah, real tough life for you, Detroit Hunter, is you get to listen to IB and grill. I know for the kids, it's a tough one. But I just wanted to thank you guys both for those. We also had another quick one here from John Banco. He said his biggest role player for him is Aeneas Williams, who we didn't talk a whole lot about, but he's a very interesting season. And then we have one final super chat, but I'm going to answer that at the end of the breakdown. So Vince, I just wanted to get those in here before we get to the college football playoff predictions.
Love it. Part 3 of our show today is our college football predictions. This is the Irish Breakdown podcast presented by FanDuel, part of the Believe Network. And we have some fun for all of you today. We have taken all of the intel, we have looked into the crystal ball. We have done everything that we need to do to make our predictions. And all three of us, without knowing what the other one was going to do, have made our predictions as to who is going to make the college football playoff, what it is going to look like, and then we're gonna reveal our entire bracket, and then obviously who ends up winning the college football playoff. So very excited about how we're going to do this. The first thing that we're going to do, though, is we are going to talk just a little bit about how things have changed from last year to this year, Brian.
We'll do that, and then we'll jump right into our reveal. So a little bit of a change to the schedule that I sent you guys. We'll go right into the reveal.
Let's do it.
But obviously, there's not a lot of changes this season. The one being, and I think the reason we bring it up is because it impacts Notre Dame the most. But this year, there is no automatic buys for conference champions in the first round like last year. So last year, your 1 seed was Oregon. They would have had it anyway. Your 2 seed was Georgia. They would have been that anyway. But then your 3 seed was Boise State, and your 4 seed was Arizona State, despite the fact those teams were not top 4 ranked teams going into last year's college football playoff. In fact, they were 2 of the, like, in a straight seeding. Neither one of those teams last season is finishing in the at home. They're not even playing at home, I don't believe. I think Boise State would have been at home, I believe, last season in the final college football playoff rankings. I'm actually trying to look for the playoff rankings right now, but I believe Boise State would have been an 8 seed. No, they would have been a 9 seed according to the playoff rankings. They're 8 in the AP poll, but they would have been a 9 seed playing at Indiana. And then Arizona State was ranked number 12. They would have had to travel to South Bend to play Notre Dame in a straight seeding. This year, it's just straight seeding. There are buys still, or there's still automatic bids. So if you win, I think it's the 5 highest the 5 highest conference champions still get in. So the 5 highest ranked conference champions still get in. So it'll basically be the 4 Power 4 teams and then a group of 5 teams. It's how it ends up being, but they call it the 5 highest ranked conference champs because there aren't 5 Power 5 teams anymore. And there are still buys. So your number 1, 2, 3, and 4 ranked teams still get a buy, but it could be all 4 SEC teams, all 4 Big Ten teams, 2 and 2 of each, which is what I think a lot of times it'll just end up being, unless Notre Dame can crash the party or Clemson can crash the party. And then just looking at the playoff this year, fellas, the quarterfinals are going to be the Cotton Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl. And then the 2 semifinal games are going to be the Fiesta Bowl and the Peach Bowl. And this year's national championship will be on January 19th in Miami, Florida. So Notre Dame fans are hoping that they start the season in Florida and finish the season in Florida. But that is the college football playoff schedule. And then round 1 will still be hosted by the higher seed of the teams playing in the first round. And I hope that always stays.
Yeah.
But that is... So that's only I believe the only significant change to the playoff this year is just getting rid of the buys for the 4 highest ranked conference champions.
Yeah, that was a big to-do last year about, is that fair? Is it this? Is it that? And to the CFP's credit, they made that change instantly, which I'm okay with that.
I think it was an overreaction.
Okay, fair.
I do. I think one data point doesn't change that. And I think the thought was, well, the 4 highest ranked teams lost. That's unfair to them. Well, I think with the exception of, I'll say in every instance, I think the better team won. That just because they were ranked higher. I think Notre Dame was better in Georgia. I think Penn State was better in Boise State. I think Texas was better than Arizona State. I think Ohio State was better than Oregon. I mean, Oregon needed like a last second to beat Ohio State on their home field last season. You get them on a neutral field, and I think the better team won. I think it's just a bit of an overreaction. My concern is that you're going to get into situations where it's just your 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds are a bunch of Big Ten and SEC teams. That's my fear, and so
that's going to happen. Your fear will be realized.
There will be years where that, or three Big Ten teams or 3 SEC teams get buys. That's my concern, and but it's really just for 1 year, most likely. It's not a given that we're going to expand after this year, but most likely it's just going to be for 1 season.
It pretty much is.
And then it'll just be everybody plays in the first round.
Right.
So that's the slight changes. And now, fellas, it's time to reveal our playoff bracket. So here's what we're going to do. I'm gonna go first, then we'll go Trev, then we'll go Vince. No, then we'll go Trev, then we'll go Vince. I got it. And then so I'll reveal my 12-5.
Okay.
And then Trev will do his 12-5. Vince will do his 12-5. Then we're going to reveal our top 4 seeds 4-1. And then I'll go, Trevor will go, Vince will go. And then we will just, after that, we won't do like a slow reveal of the rest of it. Then we'll just kind of show our quarterfinal brackets and then tell you who's going to win each game. Then we'll show you our semifinal brackets and tell you who's going to win each game. And then at the end of it, fellas, we will all pick our national championship game. And I believe we all have a different team in the championship game, or did you guys both have the same team, the two same teams?
I believe we had the same team.
Okay, so I'm the different one. I'm the weirdo. So I had a different team than those guys did. So, fellas, without further ado, I'm going to reveal my college football playoff bracket. And we're going to begin with the number 12 seed Navy Midshipmen, guys. I think this is the group of five, the best group of five team this year. I think Navy is going to be a potentially an 11-1, 12-1 team, 11-1 when they get in. I think their only loss is going to be Notre Dame. I love this Navy squad this year. I love Blake Horvath. I just think they're the best team. I think them and Boise State, potentially Memphis, are going to be the three top teams in contention. But I think the Midshipmen get it done. And they also beat Army again, which means the committee doesn't have to worry about having egg on its face for putting a team in that then loses the next weekend in a game that's not related to the college football playoff. So I have the Navy Midshipmen there, the number 12 seed. My number 11 seed is the Kansas State Wildcats, who I have winning the Big 12. I love this backfield. I talked about it yesterday, fellas. I love the Avery Johnson, Dylan Edwards, Joe Jackson backfield. I think they're going to have a dynamic offense. I think they might have the most solid defense in the Big 12. And I'm going to go with the Wildcats winning the Big 12 and getting into the college football playoff. My number 10 seed is a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people, I think. It's the Iowa Hawkeyes. This is all going to be determined by their September matchup against Iowa State. I think Iowa's a two-loss team in the Big Ten this year. They have two huge upset opportunities, and I have them doing both. I have them beating Penn State and Oregon at home this year, fellas. And so I have the Hawkeyes 10-2. If I'm going to be wrong, we're going to know that I'm wrong in September when they travel to Ames to play Iowa State. If they lose that game, they're toast. They will not be in the college football playoff, in my opinion. But I like the Hawkeyes this year. I have them number 10. My number 9 seed is the Texas A&M Aggies. I think year 2 is big for Mike Elko. I think they've recruited very well in his 2 years. I think they've done very well in the portal. They've gotten players that fit what they do for like system-wise. I think they've got a quarterback that is going to be a bit of a difference maker this year. I don't think he's an elite talent, but I think he's going to run that system real well. And I think that I like this team. I think their schedule also sets up favorably for them to be a 10-2 caliber team. And I think 10-2 against the schedule they play has them in the college football playoff. Next for me is the Oregon Ducks. They're my 8 seed. I think this is going to set up a really entertaining first-round game between the Aggies and the Ducks. I think that Oregon is going to take a step back early, lose an early game to Penn State. But by the time we get to the end of November, Oregon's going to be that team that nobody really wants to play. That's kind of my prediction. As they kind of get everybody going, their young players get into a rhythm, I think they're going to be a tough team to play. My number 7 seed is the Texas Longhorns. I do think Texas is still a playoff team. I don't think they're going to be quite as good in the regular season as people think, but I do think they're going to be a dangerous team once they get to the college football playoff because a lot of their youth will now have a lot of grit, a lot of experience under their belt. And I think that the Longhorns are going to once again be a playoff team, but not. I don't have them in the SEC title game, as you guys remember from earlier this week.
I like
my number
Texas
6 seed
going to Iowa, by the way. I think that's a cool matchup.
Yes, Iowa going to Texas.
That's what I mean. Yes, I think that's a cool matchup.
Very much so. Very much so. My number 6 seed is the Penn State Nittany Lions. As we saw in the breakdown of the Big Ten this week, I like Penn State a lot. But I do think there's a couple losses on their resume. And I do think that as good as I think Penn State will be, I do think they'll be back in the first round again this year. I do not have them as a top 4 seed. And this is going to maybe be my favorite matchup of the first round, is this 6-11 matchup between Penn State and Kansas State. I am really looking forward to seeing the speed that Kansas State has on offense going against that Penn State defense. That is going to be a fun matchup if I'm right. And my number 5 seeded team, fellas, is the Georgia Bulldogs, the runners-up in the SEC. I have the Bulldogs as the number 5 seeded team in college football going into the college football playoffs. I was very down on Georgia at the beginning of the season. there's just some things that I've seen, the way their schedule sets up, that I'm a little higher on them now, at least when it comes to getting into the playoff. And I very much look forward to that 5-12 matchup between Georgia and Navy. So that is my first round reveal for the college football playoffs.
Aha, it does exist to the doubters out there.
It does exist.
There it is. Come on,
There's actually
baby.
been a couple changes to it, though, guys. It's a couple little changes, nothing major, but a couple teams that I didn't have in before, I do have in now.
Love it. Love it. My turn?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do this. So my playoff bracket, which also does exist, you guys are getting ready to see it, but for my number 12 group of 5 bid, I have the Boise State Broncos. I would love nothing more for it to be the Navy midshipmen. I think that the committee is going to go with the risk-averse pick, and I think that they're going to go with Boise State just because Navy will still have one more game to play after the rankings are released. I think they're going to have very similar schedules. I think that they are going to both win their conference. I have Navy winning the AAC. Then I also have Boise State winning the Mountain West. I think they're going to get a little bit of a favorable bump because they were in it last year. And I don't know what kind of hesitation the committee is going to have about putting a triple option team in the playoffs, even though if they are what we think that they are, I think Navy will deserve it. But I have Boise State at my number 12. At my number 5 seed, I have the Texas Longhorns. Or I'm sorry. Well, I bumped. I accidentally went through and I did the matchups. My number 11 seed, which I'm sure is going to shock some people, I have the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Now, if you go back and you remember my ACC prediction, I have Georgia Tech.
All the way back on Monday.
All the way back to Monday. All the way back 96 hours ago. I picked Georgia Tech to be in the ACC Conference Championship game against Clemson. Now, I do have them losing. However, with that being said, I think Georgia is going to get a bump in the rankings because of an upset win they get in the final game of the regular season. And that's going to affect that team's ranking when I get to them here in a second. But I have Georgia Tech as my number 11 seed. My number 10 seed, I have the Arizona State Sun Devils. I think they win the Big 12. I think they repeat and they get back in the college football playoff this year. I love what they bring to the table, man. I really love what they bring to the table. I love Sam Leavitt going into year 2 as a starter. That connection with Jordan Tyson's going to be lethal, and they return 9 of their 11 starters on defense. I think Kenny Dillingham is going to prove to people this year that last year just wasn't a fluke and they got overlooked. My number 9 seed is going to be the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 9. I know it. Now, I think their loss at the end of the regular season, combined with not being in the SEC championship, is going to prevent them from hosting a home playoff game. And I think that Georgia Tech is going to be helped out by the fact that this game that they play with them is not in Athens. It is neutral site, but it's neutral site in Atlanta where Georgia Tech is. And so I have Georgia on the road, but still making the playoffs. And I have them squaring off against my number 8 team, the Oregon Ducks, who I do believe will make the playoffs again. Brian, I believe you and I both had Oregon as number 8 seeds. Look,
Yes,
this
sir.
is a young and inexperienced team, but a lot like what you were talking about with Texas, they're going to have an entire season to get a little bit more experience. And we're going to know very quickly when they host Penn State. Are they hosting Penn? No, I'm sorry. Oregon travels to Happy Valley.
They travel to Happy Valley, yes.
Okay. But we're going to know pretty quickly what kind of chops Dan Lanning has as a head coach. Is he going to be who everybody thinks that he is, to get his team ready for another big regular season game, now with a significantly more inexperienced offense? And how do they plug up those holes on defense like we talked about in the Big Ten preview? But I have Oregon as my number 18. My number 17, and I'm staying consistent with what I said before, I have the LSU Tigers hosting a home game. Now, look, there's a lot of things that need to happen for them. But every so often, Brian Kelly just has that year. And I'm kind of just putting my chips on the table, and I think that could be this season. Because in some of the other years where Notre Dame went undefeated, there were questions about that team coming into the season of, let's see.
Notre Dame was unranked in the preseason top 25 in 2012 and played for the national championship. To your point, Trevor.
Yep. And so I have LSU, especially with their schedule. I think it's going to be held in high regard. If they're able to pull off a 10-2 record with that schedule, I think that's going to.
Oh, God, yeah. They're hosting.
Yeah. And that's where I have them. So
yeah.
I have LSU at number 7. At number 6, I have the defending national champs, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think that this regular season is difficult enough that they're going to get valuable experience, but I do think it's easy enough that they are still hosting a home game this year. And I do also have them in the Big Ten championship game. So I have Ohio State as my number 6 seed. They have a high-powered offense. Their ceiling is going to be determined on how well they run the football. I've been saying that all offseason. And so I have Ohio State at number 6. And then at number 5, like I accidentally spoiled about 5 minutes ago, I have the Texas Longhorns.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I have the Texas Longhorns hosting the Boise State Broncos. Look, I think Texas has a favorable in-conference schedule. And while I do think it's difficult, there is a level of trust that I have with Steve Sarkisian to develop the young talent on that roster. And so I have Texas as my number 5 seed.
Your turn, Vince.
All right, guess that means it's me. No difference here from Trevor to me as far as who my number 12 seed is, and that is the Boise State Broncos. I think they are going to get even though they're going to lose to Notre Dame, I do think they are going to get a bump, from a strength of schedule standpoint. Obviously, I think they're going to win their conference. They're not going to make it in unless they win their conference, but I think their loss to Notre Dame is actually going to help them when it comes to maybe deciding who the group of 5 team is then going to end up being. And so I've got the Boise State Broncos at number 12. At number 11, might surprise some people, I do have the Miami Hurricanes here. I'm just not overly impressed with the ACC this year as a whole, and I think Miami's going to be able to take advantage of that. Still think Notre Dame is going to beat them in game number 1, and I don't know that it's going to be all that close, but I do think Miami has a lot of really good players, and I really think that for a good chunk of their season, I think it's going to come down to the Jimmies and Joes, and I think they're going to have an opportunity to win a bunch of games. And so I think they do sneak in as the second ACC team, obviously losing the ACC championship, but I think they sneak into the back end of the CFP. My number 10 team is the Big 12 champion, and that is where I have the Kansas State Wildcats. I am a fan of Kansas State for a lot of the reasons that Brian said when he was talking about Kansas State. I think their backfield is going to be really good. I think they are going to kind of rise above the muck that is the Big 12. Because there's so many different teams I think that can make some noise in the Big 12. But I have Kansas State kind of just rising above there at the end. And so they are my Big 12 champ. At number 9, and this one's going to surprise a lot of people based on if you've been listening for the entire show, but I do think that they have an opportunity here. That is the USC Trojans, and I do have them here at number 9. They have a lot of opportunity here with this schedule to make some noise. I love Trevor's face.
His camera.
Don't worry, I'm not frozen. No, I'm not frozen.
He's stuck that way.
I love it. I love it, and I knew. Look, this one was like it was like poison coming out of my mouth. I get it. But at the same time, I do think that their schedule is going to provide some opportunities for them to make some noise. And I think the Big Ten is also going to prop them up. I think they're going to have the opportunity to be propped up by the Big Ten. They're going to lose to Notre Dame, but it's not going to matter because their Big Ten record, I think, is going to be good enough to get them in as kind of the last Big Ten team to get in. And we all know that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be propped up when this is all said and done. And so I think USC has a chance to be that 4th place Big Ten team. And I think they could get in at number 9. At number 8, another Big Ten team. This is where I have the Penn State Nittany Lions. I'm not a huge believer in their quarterback. I think he's going to make some mistakes, enough to put them at like the 10-2 range, which gets them in at about number 8. If, Penn State has to host USC, that's going to be an interesting one with USC, I'm sure, complaining the entire 2 weeks prior about having to fly across the country and all of those different things and how that's not fair. And, all of those different.
They should be able to like not have to play their first round game because it gives them a better chance to win a championship.
Yeah.
And
all of those things. The excuses will be flying. But I do have Penn State here. I think they are a good team, and obviously they're good enough to make the playoff. I just think they're going to stub their toe a little bit. There's a lot of pressure on Penn State right now. I don't know. I don't think James Franklin's going to be able to handle that pressure. And so I think they stub their toe a little bit throughout the regular season. and then that puts them in the number 8 spot. At number 7, this is where I have Alabama. I think they're going to be back in the playoff where they belong. I think, obviously Alabama is a very, very good team. I think that they're probably a 10-2 team, maybe when it's all said and done, which is why I have them at the number 7 spot. And so that's why I have Alabama there. At number 6, this is where I have another Big Ten team, which is weird to say, but it's the Oregon Ducks at number 6. I would love to see Miami have to fly out to Oregon to play that first round game. I think that would be a lot of fun to watch. I do think Oregon, to your guys' point, they are young, but I think they're going to be coming on very strong at the end of the season. And I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think that they are going to be the second best Big Ten team. I think they're going to be in the Big Ten championship, but they lose the Big Ten championship. And so that's where I have them at number 6. And at number 5, to the dismay of many people in the chat, I'm sure, is where I have Notre Dame. I think that they will be 11-1. I think 11-1 has the possibility of getting them into a top 4 slot where they could potentially get a bye and all of those different things. But the way I kind of had it shaken out, I think 11-1 drops them to the number 5, and then they get to host. Now, I also realize this is a rematch of the regular season, but that's just how it shook out when I put the numbers down and I had the rankings out. It just so happened that there'd be a rematch. Would the committee allow for a rematch in round 1? I don't know.
Here's the deal: if you're correct in the teams, the reality is it's impossible to evaluate. You're going to have to drop somebody 2 spots because you can't flip Notre Dame and Oregon, and because then you're still getting Notre Dame, Miami.
You're getting another.
You can't flip Boise and Miami because then you're still getting a rematch. You'd have to flip. You'd have to drop Notre Dame to 7 or raise Kansas, or drop K-State to 12, which I don't think they would do that either.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting, to see how they handle this particular situation, this mythical situation that I have put forth. But it does provide for a rematch of.
They could put Notre Dame 4. Like that's the other thing they can consider is putting Notre Dame 4,
which is absolutely a possibility. I have such a hard time, and we'll get to the top 4. Obviously, I have such a hard time with me believing that even that an SEC team is going to get pushed behind Notre Dame. I've just seen Notre Dame get pushed back so many times that is why I have Notre Dame at 5, and I have multiple SEC teams in the top 4. You know what I mean? I can't get that out of my head. And so until I see that on a regular basis, this is why I have Notre Dame at 5.
I get it. Let's reveal our final 4 teams, guys, our top 4 seeds in the college football playoff. I'll start. I have my number 4 ranked team. I have the Clemson Tigers. I have the Tigers winning the ACC. I actually have them beating LSU to start the season, but I think they drop a game in conference, and their overall strength of schedule won't be quite as good because of some struggles of a couple teams in the ACC, but I do think Clemson comes in at number 4. My number 3 seeded team is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. As we said during the show, I have Notre Dame going 11-1, and I just can't see an 11-1 Notre Dame team as impressive as I think they will be, being ahead of the Big Ten or the SEC champ. Whether we think they're the better team or not, I just have a hard time, and I think it's a strong case to make that a 12-1 or a 12-1 Big Ten or SEC champ. I have a hard time seeing them being behind Notre Dame at 11-1. I think the only way Notre Dame 11-1 is a top 2 seed is if the Big Ten or SEC champ has 2 losses. I think that's the only way that happens. But even last year, we saw a 2-loss Georgia jump up to the number 2 seed. So it certainly could happen, and that's kind of where I'm at. My number 2 seed is the defending champs, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I have Ohio State, as we talked about on Thursday in our Big Ten predictions. I have Ohio State, Vince. You're going to love this. I have them losing. Their only loss of the regular season is to the Washington Huskies early in the season, and then going on a run and not looking back again until they get to the college football playoff as a 2 seed. And then my number 1 seeded team is the team I predicted to win the SEC, the Alabama Crimson Tide. I am a lot higher on Alabama than a lot of people are this season. I could see them dropping a second game and simply flipping with Ohio State. That's kind of how I could see that playing out this year. And if they drop a second regular season game, I still have them winning the Big Ten, the SEC, and getting in as a top 2 seed. I just think it's almost impossible for the SEC champ to not have a top 2 seed. 2 losses or not. And right now I have Bama with 1 loss. If they lose the second game, just flip them. And that's how I see this, my top 4.
Love it. Love it. My top 4, my number 4 team is the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now, if you remember from the Big Ten preview, I have Penn State playing Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. I have Ohio State winning the regular season matchup, but I actually have Penn State winning the Big Ten this year. I think it just might be a perfect storm for them, honestly. And if I'm looking at this objectively, I think the experience that they return on their roster is going to outweigh the talent of what Ohio State has because it's so young. And they will have weeks and weeks of experience built up. But this is a game, for all intents and purposes, Ohio State hasn't even played for a Big Ten championship in 4 years.
That's
and
so
Penn
wild.
State was in it last year. And so I have Penn State as my number 4 seed. My number 3 seed, I have the SEC champs, the Alabama Crimson Tide. I have them beating Texas in the SEC championship game to get an automatic bye in the 2025 playoffs. My number 2 seed is the undefeated Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I have Notre Dame going undefeated this season, and I think that it's going to – I'm with Brian. If Notre Dame has a loss, I don't see them being ranked ahead of a Big Ten champ or an SEC champ. But with them going undefeated, I have them just not being moved down in the rankings. And then my number 1 seed, I have the Clemson Tigers. I think that they go undefeated this season. And the only reason why I believe they're going to be ranked ahead of Notre Dame is, 1, I think Dabo Swinney will get a lot of credit of hey, I think Clemson's back. They have this experienced quarterback. They're good on the offensive and defensive lines. They have their stout wide receiving core. I can break that down into many granular situations is why Clemson's going to be number 1. But at the end of the day, they won a conference championship and Notre Dame didn't. And I think that's why they're going to be the 1st seed. So that is my top 4.
All right, I guess it's time for my top 4. At number 4, I have the SEC runner-up, the Georgia Bulldogs. And we were told so much last year that the championship games don't matter and you're not going to fall if you lose and all of these things. And I feel like the SEC will be rewarded, as it always is, for losing. So I have Georgia at number 4. At number 3, this is where I have the SEC champion. And this is where I have Texas. I think that Texas will they will have a loss on their schedule to Ohio State at the beginning of the year. But I think they will end up winning the SEC. And because of that, they will be rewarded with a top 3 seed. At number 2, I have the undefeated Clemson team. The Tigers, Death Valley, all of those different things. I think Clemson is actually a very, very good team this year. I'm still on the fence about Cade Klubnik, but I'm starting to fall in line with him and Dabo and the Roy bus and all of that stuff. And I think Clemson's a good team. And I just feel like as long as Dabo's in charge, they're just going to be really good. And I think Clemson has an opportunity to do that again in a, to me, weaker than normal ACC as well. And so that's why I have Clemson number 2. And then number 1, also undefeated, I have the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think they will be the Big Ten champ. I think they will be unscathed throughout the season. There will be some close calls in there, but I've got Ohio State at number 1.
All right, let's reveal our quarterfinal matchups. I'll begin. I have number 1 Alabama against number 8 Oregon. I have the Crimson Tide winning this game. I think this is going to be a really competitive game. I'm just going to say this, guys. If I'm right about my predictions, this is going to be an epic quarterfinals. These, I think, are all
a lot of blue bloods in there, buddy.
Big-time matchups in this one. And so I think this is going to be a blast. I have number 1 Alabama against number 8 Oregon. As good as I think Oregon is going to be late in the year, I still think Bama can whoop them in the trenches in this matchup. And Dan Lanning has to still show me that he can get his team ready to play in a game like this. And he just hasn't done that so far. He couldn't beat Kalen DeBoer when Kalen DeBoer had Washington's roster, went 0-3 against him. I don't think that changes in the college football playoffs against Alabama. I have the number 1 Tide cruising. My next matchup is they will play the winner of the Clemson-Georgia matchup. I think this is a rematch from last year. I think Clemson is a much better team than they were last year. I don't know where this game's going to be played. It's going to be very interesting when you kind of look at where the where the quarterfinal games are. Does this game get played in Miami in the Cotton Bowl or in the Orange Bowl? Does it get played in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl? Very curious how that plays out, but I do like Clemson in this matchup. I just think the Tigers are going to get a little bit of payback. I think that the thing that killed them in that matchup last year is if you go back, it was like 6-0 in the third quarter, I believe, or late second quarter. And Clemson had receivers getting open, but Cade Klubnik just couldn't get time, and he just flat missed some guys. He was a much different quarterback later in the year than he was earlier in the year. And I think that Clemson will have the big boys in the trenches to play with Georgia, and they'll have the speed advantage on the perimeter on offense, and I think they make enough plays. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game, but I have Clemson winning that one. I have the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes against the number 7 Texas Longhorns, a rematch of last year's semifinal game that Texas had the ball near the goal line with a chance to tie the game at 21-all, and they couldn't get it done. And you know what's going to happen in 2025 or 2026, actually, by this point in time? They're going to get it done this time. I actually have Texas pulling off the upset here against the Buckeyes. I think Ohio State is a very good team this year, so I have them number 2. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year. I think this Texas matchup, as I said before, Texas is going to have some this is a bit of a rematch, obviously, from the start of the season. But I think Texas is going to be a much different team, a much better team. And we saw last year Ohio State lost a game in the regular season, got the rematch in the postseason, and then whooped that team. I think something similar happens this year, although I don't think it's going to be a whooping. I think Ohio State wins the regular season matchup in Columbus. Texas wins the rematch in what I think will be a great game. I think it'll be a much more contested game than Ohio State, Oregon last year, but I do have the Longhorns winning that game. And then I have number 3 Notre Dame against number 6 Penn State in a rematch of last year's semifinals. And Notre Dame will show what we all knew to be true last year, which is while Penn State made the semifinals, they were not a semifinal caliber team. They just got a great draw. They won't get as good of a draw this year. And assuming they can even beat Kansas State, which is not a given, I got Penn State losing again in the quarterfinals. And the heads of Nittany Lion fans everywhere explode because they realize that Marcus Freeman is, in fact, James Franklin's daddy. So those are my predictions for the quarterfinals.
He pulled that one out. I like that. That's a good way to end it.
Oh,
go ahead,
put
Trevor.
Put a little mustard on that one. Goodness.
Some stank on it, baby. That's how we roll when it comes to Penn State.
Lord.
That's how we roll.
Wow.
We love that. Well, I have been seeing that there's some people unhappy with some of my picks in the chat, so I hope that you stay with me for my quarterfinals because I also think that this could be a very electric quarterfinal. So bear with me. I don't think Penn State's going to win the national championship, and I don't have Drew Aller as my number 1 overall quarterback. So hang in there. Hang in there, everybody. So for my quarterfinal matchups, to get us kicked off, I have the number 1 Clemson Tigers versus the number 8 Georgia Bulldogs in a rematch from week 1's slate last year. I have Clemson winning this one, I believe. Yes, I do. I have Clemson winning this matchup. Look, I think this is when the deficiencies in Georgia's roster are going to come to light. I love Kirby Smart. I love him as a head coach. But when I look at Georgia's overall defensive roster, I just don't think it was – I don't think it is what it has been. And when I look at Clemson's roster, if I'm comparing apples to apples, I give that edge to Clemson. And you can even call the coaching matchup a wash. It's one of 2 coaches in the entire country of active coaches that have national championship experience under their belt. I have this one going to Clemson. My number 2 versus number 7 matchup, I have Notre Dame playing LSU. And I wanted to try to, I wanted to figure out what type of way to get a Notre Dame LSU matchup in the playoffs. And I kid you not, this just happened organically. I came up with my rankings of everybody. I'm not as good as Vince drawing the playoff bracket. He flashed it before the show started. I had to go print mine off because I just can't. I kept getting confused where all the lines went. Yeah, I'm not as cool as you, man. So I had to go print mine off. And then everything just ended up to where Notre Dame ended up facing LSU in the quarterfinals after receiving a bye. I have Notre Dame winning this one, and I have them winning this one rather convincingly. You're going to give Marcus Freeman 5 weeks to prepare for a team that I do still believe will have question marks coming into this. And it's going to leave Brian Kelly. I will be in attendance for that post game, whether it's virtually or in person. And I cannot wait to listen to a lot of the excuses as to why, whether it's the aisle you're shopping down or the injuries that happened to you or whatnot. I have Notre Dame beating LSU convincingly in the quarterfinals. Number 4 versus number 5. I got Penn State going up against Texas. Now, for all of you who believe that I'm a secret Penn State fan, I have Texas winning this one, also convincingly against Penn State. This is when it comes.
Helmets on the field that day, Trev.
Oh, I know it.
Helmets on the field that day.
I know it, but it's going to be the one with burnt orange that walks away victorious. I have more confidence in Steve Sarkisian in this setting than I do James Franklin. And look, we've talked about it before. It comes down to which team gets hot in the playoffs. Which team starts to get hot at the end of November. I think that Texas's schedule, easier conference schedule, especially towards the end of the year for them, I think they're going to start to catch fire. And by this point in time, Arch Manning is going to have 14 career starts under his belt. And so I have Texas cruising past Penn State to the dismay of many in Happy Valley, to which I say I don't care. Now, the number 3 versus number 6 matchup, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide versus the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think this is going to be a really, really fun game. And I think it'd be extremely high scoring. This is when I think the inexperience for Ohio State is going to come into play. It's kind of a perfect storm for Alabama. It's year 2 under Kalen DeBoer. He has a quarterback that fits his system. Getting his offensive coordinator back is going to pay major dividends for them. And that receiving core at Alabama versus the DBs at Ohio State is going to be one to watch. Really, the matchups of wide receiver versus corner on either side is going to be one to watch. But I do have Alabama winning a very close one against Ohio State in the quarterfinals.
Guess that means it's my turn. All right, so here we go.
What was that?
That's just me. This is where I'm at, buddy. This is what you get. This is what you get. Okay,
right.
So the first game, I'll have Ohio State against Penn State. That means I had Penn State beating USC. Look, I gave the Trojans a chance to get into the playoff. I can't have them winning any games. Okay.
Well, their entire goal is just to get to the playoff. Apparently, they don't actually care about building a winning team.
Exactly.
They just want to schedule their way into the playoff. So mission accomplished.
Yeah, and let's be honest, they have no chance of going into Happy Valley and winning. I just don't see the USC mindset going in probably a cold environment in December and Happy Valley, going to be a whiteout. Maybe there's some snow on the ground. USC doesn't have a prayer. So I got Penn State winning in that game almost by default. I don't want to give too much credit to the Nittany Lions, but they do advance to the next round. They are up against Ohio State. I do have Notre Dame defeating Boise State. So that sets up a matchup, a rematch from last year, Georgia and Notre Dame. And I don't need to go into too much detail as to why I think Notre Dame is going to beat Boise State. I still think they're going to beat Boise State. I have Oregon defeating Miami in the first round. So that sets up a matchup of number 3 Texas and number 6 Oregon. And then in the final matchup, I have Alabama defeating Kansas State and setting up a matchup between Clemson and Alabama. So there are your matchups right there. I think Ohio State defeats Penn State. Look, I can't say that Penn State's going to win more than one game in this playoff scenario. I think they will be outclassed by Ohio State. Doesn't matter where that game is being played. Be played in the parking lot. Ohio State still is going to win that game.
Penn State has something that USC doesn't have, Trevor and Vince, a head coach that's won a playoff game.
I mean, that's fair.
Lincoln Riley's been to it 4 times, just has never won
one. No, that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. But I have Ohio State advancing to the Final Four. In the matchup between Georgia and Notre Dame, I think that Notre Dame will once again prevail over Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs, even though Georgia will, be looking for that revenge and all of those different things. And that game, what are you had? I don't know if you had this in front of you, Brian. What are the 4 sites that are available during this round?
Yeah, the quarterfinals will be the Cotton Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl.
Okay. So,
and I have a feeling this one won't be played in New Orleans like it was last year.
No.
I think that'll be, like, even in your bracket, that's probably Clemson, Alabama.
Right, I agree. They're probably going to get shipped out to California or something.
Or down to Florida for the Orange Bowl.
Yep, I agree. So I do think Notre Dame is going to beat Georgia again. I think they've got their number, and I like Notre Dame advancing to the Final Four. As far as the Texas-Oregon matchup, I like this matchup. I think this matchup could be a lot of fun, but I do have Texas winning this particular matchup. And then the biggest upset that I've got from a numbers standpoint is the number 7 Alabama Crimson Tide taking out the number 2 Clemson Tigers in this round. So Alabama advances to the Final Four.
I dig it. All right. You guys ready for my matchups, my next round?
Let's go.
So let's go to the semifinals. I have the number 1 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide against the number 4 ranked Clemson Tigers. Vince was talking about games. I think this one is probably the Peach Bowl is where this one probably gets played. I think this is the latest installment. I think there's one more Bama Clemson big time game left, and I think we're going to see that one this year. I think it's going to be a great game. I just think Alabama's offense is going to be a little bit too much for what I think to be a Clemson defense that's very good up front, but just not quite good enough in the secondary outside of Avian Terrell to keep Alabama in check. I think the Crimson Tide get this one done. And then my matchup between Notre Dame and Texas. This would be a phenomenal, epic matchup. At the end of the day, I think Notre Dame can run with Texas. The difference in this game is that Notre Dame will be able to do to Texas what every other good team that they've played the last couple of years has done, and that is beat them in the trenches. And I don't say that as an insulting thing. That's just part of the evolution that Coach Sark's got to get to. I think he took steps to improve the defensive line this year. I think they'll be better on that side of the ball. I think their offensive line is where there's a lot of work still needed, and that's where Notre Dame will take advantage and win this matchup. I do think it'll most likely be in the Cotton Bowl, which is interesting because that is actually not Cotton Bowl. I'm sorry, Fiesta Bowl, which could you maybe look at and say that might be advantage Texas from and they're a little closer. At the end of the day, when there's this time off, I don't think that stuff matters. And Notre Dame has certainly played on that field recently. I think Notre Dame gets it done. I think Notre Dame's the better team. It could end up being a competitive game, but I think it's one where from start to finish, Notre Dame is clearly the better team. So that is my results for the semifinals.
Love it. We'll dive over into mine. So for my semifinal matchups, my 4 semifinal teams, rather, I have number 1 Clemson versus the number 5 Texas Longhorns.
Rematch.
Yes, sir. And then my number 2 versus number 3, I have Notre Dame versus Alabama. Look, I'm a big believer in teams catching fire in the playoffs, and I think that's just going to be Texas. I think athletically on the outside, down the field, I think their receivers are going to find a rhythm late in November that they're going to be able to carry over into the postseason. And I have a lot of questions about Clemson's secondary, similar to what Brian has. And I think Clemson's going to benefit from a Georgia team that isn't going to be able to push the ball down the field as effectively as what I believe Texas is going to be able to. So I have Texas beating Clemson, advancing to the national championship. Notre Dame versus Alabama. And this is one that I know will be drawing a lot of attention. Notre Dame and Alabama will always draw a lot of national attention. But for many reasons, it is, can Notre Dame slay the dragon? That's Alabama. Brian, you've been saying it all offseason long. There's one team in the SEC that Notre Dame fans and Notre Dame just can't really get over that hump yet, and that's Alabama. We saw it in 2020. We saw it in 2012. I believe this is going to be the year that they're going to be able to do it. I think Alabama is going to struggle to run the football a little bit more than what people are giving them credit for. I like Jam Miller. I do, but their run game last year was really based around Jalen Milroe, and now they don't have that dynamic 1-2 punch of Jam Miller and Justice Haynes. I think Notre Dame's run defense is going to be a lot more effective than what it was last year, and this is the level of the playoffs that it's going to matter that Notre Dame develops a downfield passing game. These are the matchups where it matters. And I have Notre Dame being able to successfully push the ball down the field vertically. And I think that Jeremiah Love is, 1, healthy, and 2, a bigger factor in the playoffs this year compared to what he was last year. I have Notre Dame over Alabama advancing to the national championship.
Can you dig it, Vince? Let's go, man.
All right, Final Four for me. I've got Ohio State, Notre Dame in one matchup, and I've got Texas, Alabama in another matchup. You want to talk about blue bloods all over the place. That is where we are in my Final Four. Look, I think Notre Dame finally gets the Ohio State bugaboo off their back. Like they've been so close the last few times that they've played, and they haven't been able to get over the hump. I think they finally are able to do it on a big stage. They're 0-3 against Ohio State over the last 3 times they've played. 4th time's a charm, baby. Notre Dame gets past Ohio State in this one. And because I think that they have the secondary to defend what Ohio State is best at, and that is their receiving core. And so that is where I think Notre Dame, again, finally gets off the schneid when it comes to Ohio State. So Notre Dame advances. And then you got Texas, Alabama, which I think is a fun matchup as well. And I'm going to give it to the Longhorns on this one. I'm going to have Texas advancing over Bama to set up a Texas Notre Dame national championship.
I love the North versus North, South versus South kind of flair to these semifinal games, guys.
There we go.
I really do. I didn't even think about that when I was putting these cards together. But yeah, you got the 2 best teams in the North against the 2 best teams in the South, and then the winner take all down in Miami. So fellas, are you ready? Are you guys ready?
I'm ready to hear who you have as your
championship game. So we've got the number 1 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide against the number 3 Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Guys, I think this is a full circle game. We talk about slaying dragons. Obviously, at Notre Dame in my bracket, in my playoff, will not have a chance to slay the Ohio State Dragon. But much like when Ohio State couldn't beat Michigan last year, nobody cared because at the end of the day, they got the title. And then when I look at this opportunity, let's think back to when Brian Kelly kind of had his moment in 2012 when we first saw Notre Dame play for a title again for the first time since 1988. And it was against who? The Alabama Crimson Tide. It was where? Miami, Florida, in Hard Rock Stadium. I don't think it was called Hard Rock at the time, but it's the same stadium. And Notre Dame that day couldn't get it done. The difference now is this is a very, very different Notre Dame team, and this is also a different Alabama team. I think that Notre Dame, I love the matchup, both 2 very good offenses, one of the best receiving cores in college football and one of the smartest offensive minds in college football, Kalen DeBoer, going against the Notre Dame secondary is going to be a tremendously epic matchup. Here's what it comes down to in this one. I like the speed that Notre Dame has up front against the size of the Alabama offensive line. And Alabama can try to run the ball. That's just not really who they are. I think guys like Boubacar Traore, Bryce Young, Josh Burnham, Jason Onye have big games, come up with some crucial sacks of Ty Simpson. And then on the other side, how does Notre Dame's offensive line handle the Alabama defensive line? This time, Notre Dame is going to have a Gerby Lambert, potentially, a Billy Schrauth, maybe a Charles Jagasol, depending on how things go, Emil Wagner, ready to perform. And I think that Notre Dame is going to be able to have some matchup advantages at the skill positions. And this time, Notre Dame has the talent in the trenches and the talent at the skill positions to get it done. And where the season started, the season ends, and the result in both times is the same exact thing. Notre Dame comes out victorious. And my national champion is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Love it. Oh, I love it. Gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. Gives me so many goosebumps. Let's talk about another Notre Dame national championship game. I have the number 2, I believe, Notre Dame Fighting Irish versus the number 5 Texas Longhorns. Now, in another storybook type of full circle moment, we've been talking a lot this offseason about how Notre Dame continues to be overlooked and they just can't recruit like Texas and they don't have the speed of Texas. And Texas is they're by far, they have the best quarterback room and the best O-line and the best D-line and the best linebackers and the best secondary in the country. We've been seeing all that. Right now, Arch Manning has the best odds to win the Heisman Trophy. All chips are on the table for Texas while Notre Dame continues to be overlooked. Well, they will have their opportunity on January 19th to prove them wrong. As it goes into it right now, Notre Dame is 8th. They have the 8th best odds on FanDuel to win the national championship this season at plus 1,400 odds. Now, how I see this game going down is very similar, actually, to how Brian painted this picture in the semifinals. I think Notre Dame in the trenches is going to be able to win their individual matchups against Texas. This is going to come down to how are they able to defend Colin Simmons? Will Notre Dame's offensive tackles be able to hold up against Colin Simmons? I think that they're going to be able to. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. And then defensively, this is going to be a really good matchup for their secondary. Young athletic receiving core versus an experienced and also still kind of young and athletic secondary for Notre Dame. So I would be lying if I said that I didn't already have it on my calendar for a post-game show on January 19th. And I feel like I'm going to be significantly happier on this one. I have Notre Dame winning the national championship over Texas.
Let's go show it. There it is.
Well, in the most anticlimactic final go here with my national championship game, I've got Texas versus Notre Dame, and I'm not going to repeat everything that Trevor said. I just think that there's going to be an awful lot of that Florida grass on the back of the shirt of a Manning, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I just think it's going to be a defensive game where Notre Dame's defense just takes apart Texas, and they're going to do plenty on offense. They're going to be fine on offense. It's going to be great. It's just, I don't think Manning and the Longhorns are going to know what hit them on the defensive side of the football. And that is what is going to win Notre Dame their championship. Look, we've said for a long time, Brian, you and I have been talking about this for years and years and years, that Notre Dame is a quarterback away from a national championship. They will have the quarterback to do it. They will be able to score points. They will be able to push the ball down the field. They're going to do all the things that we hope that they do. But at the end of the day, the headline is going to be how Notre Dame's defense dominated Texas's offense, and that is why they won the national championship. I just think the front seven and the back 4 or 5 for Notre Dame is just going to they're just going to be throwing haymakers all day on Texas, and there's going to be a party in Miami. And there's going to be a lot of green, blue, and gold down there having a very excited night on the 19th. And so I've got Notre Dame winning it, and all three of us apparently do as well. And again, we don't do these together. This is not like a group think thing. These are all individual, and Notre Dame has the tools to make this happen. Now we get to see if it actually does come to fruition.
I mean, look, we're having some fun here, right? I mean, no one should be going to bet their mortgage on a football game ever, but definitely not, for a
not based on what we say. Don't do it.
But like, I do want to say this too, is like last year, like I think Ant VR was like, I picked them to win last year. And I think what happened last year was I said, look, I don't think they're going to win a title, but heck, we're here, we're having some fun. I got Notre Dame winning it all. But I didn't think they were going to win it all last year. I did think they were going to make a deep run last year. I just look at this football team and you say, yeah, Notre Dame's got some quarterback questions that got to get figured out. Well, so do a lot of teams in college football this year. I mean, Alabama's got a first-time quarterback. Texas has got a new quarterback. Ohio State's got a new quarterback. There's plenty of teams that have first-time quarterbacks, and I just think things kind of work out sometimes in your favor to where your weakness is not necessarily as bad or perceived weakness or inexperience is not as bad, because a lot of the best teams in college football, including Oregon, there's another team, a first-year quarterback, just have the same issue that you have. And that's where I view this football team right now, guys, is I just think they're balanced. They should be good in the trenches. They've got skill, they've got speed, they've got athleticism, they've got great coaching. And I think things fall their way. And I think this is going to be a fun year of college football. That Notre Dame win or lose, it's going to be a fun year of college football. But I genuinely believe that this is Notre Dame's best chance to win a title since Lou Holtz is the head coach. And not just this year, but like we're in a period where I think Notre Dame's got that opportunity. And they've got to make the right decisions at quarterback. That doesn't mean they should pick the right guy. It just needs to be the proper process, and they need to have better health than they did last year. They need some guys to step up on the defensive line. You need Chris Ash to be what we hope he can be. There's a lot of teams that have questions like that going into the season. They've got to get positive answers to those, and if they do, and I think that they will, this is a team that's got a shot to win a championship. I have no doubt in my mind. As I said before, there's 7-8 teams that I think have a chance to win a championship this year. Notre Dame is one of them, and I think this is the team that finally gets it done. I just think there's so many things that you look at and talk about, like, okay, you've got to beat this team, you get this opportunity, all these different things to slay some of those final dragons, and I think this year we see Marcus Freeman get it done in Miami.
Well, there it is, boys. Those are our predictions for the college football season. Notre Dame, the entire CFP. And so take them to the bank. No, I'm just kidding. But we do this for fun. It's always a good time, and I love seeing what everybody comes up with. And basically, we share with you guys when everybody's revealing their picks. Like I didn't know what Trevor's picks were going to be. I didn't know what Brian's picks were going to be, and so that was fun to kind of get those all revealed as well. So a lot of fun.
I'm the only one who knows what everybody else does because I have to put the cards together. But I waited to put their cards on there till I had my bracket done, which makes it more fun.
Yes,
and it was fun to put it together. And I'll tell you what, some of them. I mean, I look at mine and I'm like, God, I hope I'm right. Just because I look at the quarterfinal matchups and it's Bama, Oregon, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State. And I'm thinking, well, that'd be great. And then I look at Trevor's, I'm like, yeah, but that's Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State, Texas, Clemson, Georgia, Notre Dame, LSU. Now I look at Vince's and I'm like, yeah, his isn't as good. No, I'm kidding. He has Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, and Texas, Oregon. I mean, we have a lot of the same teams. This is a little joke, my man. But, like, those are epic games. And then you look at the semifinals, and there's epic potential matchups and games, and that's something I'm looking forward to. And we saw it last year. I mean, Notre Dame, Penn State, that's two blue bloods. Texas, Ohio State, that's two blue bloods, and they both played in great games. And I think we'll see it again this year. I think there's going to be a lot of blowouts in round one again. Yeah, because that's just always going to happen. No matter how you spin it, it's always going to happen.
Yep.
And I don't know if there's going to be all four of them are going to be kind of blowouts. I think like in my bracket, there's a couple games I'm like, dude, I could see, I could see K-State giving Penn State a game. I really could. There's a couple others. I look at some of the first round matchups of yours, Trev. I think LSU Arizona State could be a really good football game. I think Georgia Oregon is a much different game than Tennessee Ohio State was last year. And I just think it's going to be a fun year. I really do.
Agreed. And go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead, Vince.
I was going to say it all kicks off here in a week for college football in general, and then a couple of weeks for Notre Dame. Excited. So we're on the doorstep of the college football season, folks. And so enjoy it, have fun with it. It's going to be freaking awesome. So
before we do our outro, and Vince, I'll have you. This part won't be on the podcast, but I wanted to bring this up. We did have a question from a super chat from Michael Cannon, and I wanted to bring it up. I wanted to wait to the end because this wasn't really pertinent to any of the things we were talking about before, but Michael did give us a super chat, and I wanted to respond to it. He says, real quick, with the money Michigan got hit with, do you think it's possible for former alum or boosters to pick up that tab and help Michigan out a little bit? You know how the diehard boosters at Michigan are. And the answer is, yeah, of course they will. But the problem is they're also needing to foot the bill for the $20 million payroll that they have now. They have to foot the bill for part of the coaching staff. I've read somewhere that Michigan had something like a $27 million budget deficit last year for their sports programs. That was before you add a $20 million deal. So, and there's not the money coming in from the postseason that we've talked about during this period of time. So I do think that they could do that, but look, that money can dry up pretty quick. And so, yeah, they'll pay it, but that's not going to be true for every team. And this is the whole point. It's a deterrent. And the hope is that by doing so, you say, hey, look, I'm not willing to do that because I'm not willing to foot the bill. I'm already having to foot the bill. And the other thing too is just because they're paying the $20 million for the rev share, they're also footing the bill for a lot of the NIL deals on top of the rev share that are happening that are going to help with recruiting. So, look, you could say, hey, this guy's got $1 billion, but man, that stuff starts to go pretty quickly when you're having to pay for all these things and go to these donors for all these things. It's just, and then if you're not winning, they may be less apt to say, okay, now I got to pay $40 million for a buyout for a head football coach. Like, it's a lot. So I think
they're not getting the revenue from postseason either. So not only are they shelling out more, but they're not getting as much in.
Right.
So it's a kind of a double-edged sword as far as the financial piece of this is concerned.
So I think this is still going to punch them in the gut pretty hard. So that's my take on that. So I just wanted to put that out there, Michael. Thank you for getting that. But that'll do it, folks. Do us a favor. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Share this podcast. Give us a 5-star review. Make sure you've signed up for the CFB Nation podcast as well. You can find that on anywhere that you find the podcast platform. Vince and Trevor are working on the details, but we're going to have a new show added to our in-season repertoire. That's going to be those two guys getting together every week. We're Still haven't come up with the name, but it's going to have to do with some betting and some odds, and some different things on top of Trevor and I are working through a couple solo shows he's going to do on CFB Nation this season. I'm working on some things on CFB Nation. So we're excited. We're going to do even more on that. Of course, we've got a brand new content plan for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. We're going to reveal all of the new layout of that on Monday. Reveal that on Monday of what that's going to look like. But man, I'm excited for the season. You're definitely going to want to be part of the message board. There's things that in the past you've gotten on this channel and on other platforms that we've kind of done for free that are going to be put to, premium members only, because we want to start giving a little bit more love to the people who are part of that community. And so there's some things that we're going to do a little bit differently there. So we'll reveal all that on Monday. You'll find that out on this channel, which is why you need to be subscribed. But of course, we've already put a lot of it on the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Trevor, phenomenal job today. Vince, awesome job today, man. Love the work you guys did. And all of you, thank you for being with us on this Saturday afternoon. We'll see you again here on Monday on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.